Good evening, everyone. Noam Chomsky had said, if it's wrong when they do it, it's wrong when we do it. That defines the international relations, and especially in the current scenario, it's even more true. We have gathered today for a very unique program to commemorate the 30-year service of Professor Sanjyot Apte, and I'm proud to say that I have been her student. As a student, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome all the distinguished speakers here, this huge gathering of Dr. Apte's students, colleagues, friends, and all well-wishers. Last year on 19 July, we released the book cover. Today we publish the book, Changing Contours of International Relations, that contains an interdisciplinary perspective on the international relations. This is the true and our honest tribute to our beloved Apte ma'am, who has been a source of inspiration, not just to me, but hundreds of students and many other people. Her academic contribution is truly celebrated with this book that gives us insights into the changing dynamics of international relations in today's world. To celebrate this, the 30 years of teaching career of Dr. Apte, today we have scholars, Professor Shrikant Paranjpe, Professor Rupa Rege Nitsure, and Group Captain Purohit, along with Honorable Umranikar sir, who is a strong pillar of our BA Civil Service program, and also our principal, Dr. Mohoril. I request Dr. Mohoril to felicitate Honorable Umranikar sir. I now request Dr. Mohoril to welcome our first guest and speaker, Professor Shrikant Paranjpe, an expert and scholar in the field of political science, international relations, and defense studies. I now request Dr. Mohoril to felicitate our second guest and speaker, Dr. Rupa Rege Nitsure, who is an eminent economist I now request Dr. Mohoril to welcome Group Captain Praveer Purohit from the Indian Air Force. Captain Purohit is an expert in defense studies and geopolitics. I also request Dr. Mohoril to welcome the publisher, Mukta Kulkarni, on behalf of the publishing house, Unique Foundation, I request Dr. Mohoril to welcome Mukta Kulkarni. I request Dr. Belsare to felicitate our principal, Dr. Mohoril, on behalf of the entire editorial team. A year ago, Dr. Belsare had floated this idea of organizing a program that focuses on international relations and political science to mark the career of Dr. Apte in SP College. Dr. Apte retired in last July. The idea of publishing articles and organizing a series of talks was floated by Dr. Belsare, and we all immediately were very happy and we picked up that idea. Actually, this academic excellence is the true tribute to any teacher who has been passionate about a subject for so many years. I now request Professor Belsare to actually express her views regarding the book.
Thank you, Arundhati. मी मुद्दाम मराठीत बोलणार आहे. सन्माननीय व्यासपीठ आणि संजोतचे सुहृदजन हो आणि विद्यार्थी, चांगल्या प्राध्यापकाचे काम केवळ शिकवण्यापुरते मर्यादित नसते. प्राध्यापक विद्यार्थ्यांच्या आकलनाच्या कक्षा विस्तारण्यासाठी त्यांना प्रश्न विचारण्यास, अवांतर वाचन करण्यास, विचार करण्यास प्रवृत्त करत असतो. संजोत याच प्रकारची प्राध्यापिका आहे. तिचा दृष्टिकोन नेहमीच विद्यार्थी केंद्रीय होता. आपल्या विद्यार्थ्यांनी पाठ्यपुस्तकापलीकडे जाऊन जीवनानुभव घ्यावेत यासाठी तिने अनेक प्रकल्प राबवले. अशा प्राध्यापकाच्या योगदानाची पूर्तता केवळ निवृत्तीचा एक औपचारिक निरोप समारंभ आयोजित करून होऊ शकत नाही. सुदैवाने या कॉलेजमध्ये निवृत्त होणाऱ्या प्राध्यापकांच्या सन्मानार्थ काही खास कार्यक्रमांचे आयोजन करून त्यांना निरोप देण्याची परंपरा काही विभागांतर्फे पाळली जाते. संजोतसाठी अशा कार्यक्रमाव्यतिरिक्त अजून काहीतरी खास अर्थपूर्ण काय करता येईल याचा विचार करण्यासाठी मी, राहुल मेश्राम, प्रणिता पाठक, जिंजुमन प्रसन्नन आणि सायली कुलकर्णी एकत्र जमलो आणि संजोतच्याच खास आवडीच्या इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्स या विषयावर एक पुस्तक तयार करण्याचा निर्णय झाला. संजोतच्या मदतीने लेखकांची नावे निश्चित केली. पुणे, मुंबई, दिल्ली, लंडन स्थित हे लेखक संजोतचेच विविध स्तरांवरचे सहकारी व विद्यार्थी आहेत. यानंतरचे महत्त्वाचे काम होते विषयसूत्राला धरून लेखकांसाठी विषयांची निवड करणे. संजोतची सहकारी नेहा आगाशे आमच्यात सामील झाली आणि विषयांची निवड करण्याची जबाबदारी तिने लीलया पार पाडली. या लेखांच्या संकलनाला प्रस्तावना लिहिण्यासाठी सर्वांच्या मनात एकच नाव होते आणि ते म्हणजे या विषयातील तज्ज्ञ आणि संजोतचे शिक्षक डॉक्टर श्रीकांत परांजपे. या पुस्तकातील विविध लेख राष्ट्रांतील संबंधांचा अतिशय वेगाने बदलणाऱ्या समीकरणांचा वेध घेतात. चीन, ट्रम्प, इंग्लंड, आशियातील राष्ट्रे अशा विविध केंद्रबिंदूंना स्पर्श तर करतातच, पण त्याचबरोबर या संबंधांशी निगडीत राजकीय, आर्थिक, नैतिक आणि कायद्याशी संबंधित पैलूंचीही उकल करतात. डिजिटल युग, तंत्रज्ञान ते AI यांच्या साधनात्मक वापरांच्या कक्षा, मर्यादा, त्यांचे साधक-बाधक परिणाम यांचेही विश्लेषण आणि चिकित्सा करतात. प्राध्यापक श्रीकांत परांजपे यांनी या सर्व लेखांची वस्तुनिष्ठ आणि चिकित्सक मीमांसा केली आहे आणि आपल्या भाष्यातून या विषयांचे मर्मग्राही विवेचन आपल्यासमोर मांडले आहे. हे पुस्तक तयार करण्याची जबाबदारी युनिक फाउंडेशनने स्वीकारली. तुकाराम जाधव सर मॅडमचेच विद्यार्थी, तुकाराम सर, मुक्ता कुलकर्णी आणि विवेक घोटाळे यांनी अगदी आपुलकीने हे काम केले. तुकाराम जाधव यांचा दृष्टिकोनही विद्यार्थी केंद्रीय असल्यामुळे त्यांनी पुस्तकाचे मूल्य केवळ 300 रुपये असे ठेवले आहे. हे पुस्तक उत्तम प्रतीचे व्हावे यासाठी प्रणिता, नेहा, मधुरा आरेकर आणि विवेक घोटाळे यांनी अक्षरशः जीवाचे रान केले. मला विवेक घोटाळे यांचा खास ऋणनिर्देश करायचा आहे. शांतपणे पार्श्वभूमीला राहून काम करणारे विवेक सर. चित्राकृतीसाठी जे कॅनव्हासचे महत्त्व, तेच महत्त्व या पुस्तकाच्या बाबतीत विवेक सरांचे आहे. जाता जाता संपादकांच्या टीमतर्फे मला एवढेच सांगायचे आहे की आम्ही सर्व एडिटोरियल टीम फक्त संजोतबद्दल आत्मीयता असणाऱ्या तिचे मित्र, तिचे सहकारी, तिचे विद्यार्थी यांचे रिप्रेझेंटेटिव्ज आहोत. संजोत, ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ ऑल दीज कलिग्स, फ्रेंड्स and students, we are offering you this precious academic gift. Please cherish the gift and the memories that follow. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. We all are very thankful to you for your ideas, for your encouragement and unwavering support for the publishing of this and the release of this book. In today's digital world, to be very honest, more than the authors and editors, the publisher of the book is actually the most important person. The real joy of publishing is actually getting that book fresh out of printing, which promises quality and also provides wonderful thoughts to ponder upon. That is the real joy. I request Mukta Kulkarni to express her views and also give us let us be a part of that joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, and very enthusiastic audience comprising of students, colleagues, friends, and well-wishers of Sanjyot Apte, ma'am. I extend a very warm welcome to you all on behalf of the Unique Foundation, Pune. Our association with Apte, ma'am, in a personal and professional capacity goes way back. Actually, I was never a student of Apte, ma'am, and I deeply regret it, as I did my graduation from Kolhapur. But my husband, the director of the Unique Academy, Tukaram Jadhav sir, was a student in SP College. She was the primary reason which made him specialize in political science for graduation and later for masters. मी त्यांच्याकडून आपटे मॅडमचं नाव, त्यांची शिकवण्याची पद्धत, त्यांचा प्रेमळ स्वभाव आणि विद्यार्थ्यांना प्रोत्साहन देण्याची वृत्ती याबद्दल इतक्यांदा ऐकलं होतं की जेव्हा मी मॅडमना प्रत्यक्ष भेटले तेव्हा मला असं वाटलंच नाही की मी यांना ओळखत नाही आहे. So due to our long association with her, when the proposal to publish felicitation volume in her honor came along, we all at the Unique Foundation immediately accepted it. I would like to take this opportunity to speak a little bit about our institute, the Unique Foundation. Supported by the Unique Academy, which is a well-established name in the field of UPSC and MPSC coaching, the Unique Foundation is primarily a research and publication institute. आम्ही गेल्या 12 वर्षांपासून महाराष्ट्रातील जनसामान्यांच्या विविध प्रश्नांवर संशोधनात्मक काम करत आहोत. संस्थेने शेती प्रश्न, दुष्काळ, पाण्याचा प्रश्न, मायग्रेशन, रिव्हर्स मायग्रेशन, ऊस तोडणी कामगारांचं जगणं अशा अनेक मुद्द्यांवर प्रत्यक्ष ग्राउंड लेवलला जाऊन संशोधन केलं आहे. आमच्या पॉलिसी क्रिटिक किंवा धोरण चिकित्सा मालिकेद्वारे आम्ही केंद्र आणि राज्य सरकारांच्या कल्याणकारी योजनांची चिकित्सा करून शिफारसी सुचवण्यावर भर दिला आहे. त्यात आम्ही प्रधानमंत्री फसल विमा योजना, जलयुक्त शिवार योजना, तसेच शिक्षण हक्क कायद्याची अंमलबजावणी यासारख्या अहवाल प्रकाशित करून त्याच्यावर सार्वजनिक चर्चा देखील घडवून आणल्या आहेत. तसंच नुकताच आम्ही महाराष्ट्राच्या बदलत्या ग्रामीण राजकीय अर्थव्यवस्थेविषयी एक मोठा संशोधन प्रकल्प पूर्ण करून त्याचा विस्तृत अहवालही प्रकाशित केला आहे. महाराष्ट्रातील 17 गावांच्या अभ्यासावर तसंच राजकीय नेतृत्व, अभ्यासक, पत्रकार, आंदोलक, राजकीय सामाजिक कार्यकर्ते अशा अनेकांच्या मुलाखतींवर हा अभ्यास आधारित आहे. 1990च्या दशकात स्वीकारलेल्या जागतिकीकरणाच्या धोरणाचा महाराष्ट्राच्या ग्रामीण भागावर काय परिणाम झाला हे शोधण्याचा प्रयत्न या प्रकल्पामधून केला आहे. महाराष्ट्राचा अभ्यास करणाऱ्या अभ्यासक आणि विद्यार्थ्यांना अतिशय उपयुक्त ठरेल असाच हा अहवाल आहे. याखेरीज गेल्या काही वर्षांपासून आम्ही पुस्तक प्रकाशनांवर जास्त भर देत आहोत. सामाजिक, आर्थिक, राजकीय आणि सांस्कृतिक विषयांवरील अतिशय रिलेव्हंट आणि दर्जेदार पुस्तकं प्रकाशित करण्यावर आमचा भर असतो. वैचारिक पुस्तकांखेरीज सोशल सायन्सेसच्या विद्यार्थ्यांना उपयोगी पडतील अशी सिलेबस आधारित पुस्तकंही आम्ही प्रकाशित करत आहोत. सर्व पुस्तकांची नावं घेणं इथं शक्य नाही, पण काही रिसेंट उदाहरणं म्हणजे स्थूल अर्थशास्त्र एक परिचय हा ॲलेक्स थॉमस लिखित पुस्तकाचा अनुवाद, किंवा भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था बाय प्रोफेसर लता धेंडे, विवेक घोटाळे सर लिखित विद्यार्थ्यांसाठी भारतीय राज्यघटना इत्यादी अशी जवळपास 85 पुस्तकं आम्ही आजवर प्रकाशित केली आहेत आणि लवकरच आम्ही 100 गाठू असा आम्हाला विश्वास आहे. खरं तर द युनिक फाउंडेशन ही अतिशय छोटी संस्था आहे. अतिशय हार्डवर्किंग असलेले आमचे कार्यकारी संचालक विवेक घोटाळे सर संस्थेची जबाबदारी अतिशय समर्थपणे पार पाडत आहेत आणि आमचे सहकारी केदार देशमुख सर यांचीही त्यांना मोलाची साथ आहे. आणि आमच्या या प्रकाशनांच्या यादीत आपटे मॅडमच्या फेलिसिटेशन व्हॉल्यूमची भर पडली आहे याचा आम्हाला अत्यंत आनंद होत आहे. इट इज अ ग्रेट ऑनर फॉर अस. कारण ॲकॅडमिक एक्सलन्सच्या पलीकडे जाऊन त्यांनी ज्या प्रकारे झोकून देऊन विद्यार्थी घडवण्याचं काम केलं आहे ते खूपच महत्त्वाचं आहे. मी थोडंसं माझे पती तुकाराम जाधव यांच्याबद्दल सांगेन, कारण तेच मॅडमचे विद्यार्थी होते. त्यांना फारसं पर्सनल बोललेलं आवडत नाही, पण तरी देखील हे सांगणं मला गरजेचं वाटतं. माझे पती तुकाराम जाधव हे जेव्हा लातूर जिल्ह्यातील एका अतिशय छोट्याशा खेड्यातून अतिशय मॉडेस्ट बॅकग्राऊंडमधून पुण्यात FYBAला शिकायला SP सारख्या कॉलेजमध्ये आले, तेव्हा इथल्या विशिष्ट सांस्कृतिक वातावरणामुळं ते दबून जाणं, बावरून जाणं अतिशय साहजिक होतं. अशावेळी आपटे मॅडमनी त्यांना खूप एनकरेज केलं. त्यांच्यातील पोटेन्शियल ओळखून त्यांना आधार आणि आत्मविश्वास दिला. इतकंच नव्हे तर तेव्हापासून आजपर्यंत आमच्या पर्सनल प्रोफेशनल कोणत्याही अडचणींमध्ये त्या नेहमीच आमच्या पाठीशी उभ्या राहिलेल्या आहेत. त्यांचं हे वैशिष्ट्यच त्यांना आपटे मॅम बनवतं. आणि माझी खात्री आहे की असं त्यांनी अनेक असंख्य शेकडो हजारो विद्यार्थ्यांच्याबद्दल केलेलं आहे. त्यामुळं इट इज अ ग्रेट ऑनर फॉर अस टू पब्लिश हर फेलिसिटेशन व्हॉल्यूम. आता थोडंसं पुस्तकाविषयी. चेंजिंग कंटूर्स ऑफ इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्स हे युनिक फाउंडेशनच्या मोजक्याच इंग्रजी प्रकाशनांपैकी एक आहे. आपटे मॅडमशी निरनिराळ्या प्रकारे संबंधित असलेल्या अभ्यासकांच्या अनेक लेखांचा यात समावेश आहे. यात समकालीन आंतरराष्ट्रीय राजकारण, जागतिक सत्ता समीकरणं, डिजिटल युगातील विशेषतः आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजन्सच्या काळातील आव्हानं आणि बदलती जिओपॉलिटिकल रियालिटी यांचे सखोल विश्लेषण आहे. उत्तरा सहस्त्रबुद्धे मॅडमसारख्या ज्येष्ठ अभ्यासकांपासून पंकज फणसे, जिंजुमॉन प्रसन्नन यासारख्या युवा संशोधकांपर्यंत अनेकांचे लेख यात समाविष्ट आहेत. डॉक्टर श्रीकांत परांजपे सरांसारख्या अतिशय ज्येष्ठ अभ्यासकांची समर्पक अशी प्रस्तावना याला लाभली आहे. मी प्रकाशक या नात्याने सर्व लेखकांचे तसेच संपादक मंडळाचे अतिशय मनःपूर्वक आभार मानते. आणि हा ग्रंथ आज अतिशय सवलतीच्या दरात इथं उपलब्ध आहे. त्यामुळे सर्व विद्यार्थ्यांनी आणि अभ्यासकांनी याचा अवश्य लाभ घ्यावा असं नम्र आवाहन करते आणि इथंच थांबते. थँक्यू.
Thank you, Kulkarni Madam. I request our Principal, Dr. Mohil, to express his views.
विद्येची आराध्य देवता माता सरस्वतीला सर्वप्रथम नमन करतो. मंचावर उपस्थित महाराष्ट्र राज्याचे माजी पोलीस महासंचालक आदरणीय उमराणीकर सर, या ठिकाणी ज्यांचं संबोधन आपण ऐकणार आहोत ते ज्येष्ठ वक्ते प्रोफेसर श्रीकांत परांजपे, डॉक्टर रूपा निटसुरे आणि ग्रुप कॅप्टन पुरोहित सर. उत्सव मूर्ती डॉक्टर संजयोत आपटे, यासोबतच आत्ता ज्यांनी या पुस्तकासंबंधी माहिती दिली त्या प्रकाशक, सभागृहामध्ये उपस्थित सप महाविद्यालयाचे माजी प्राचार्य डॉक्टर शेठ, डॉक्टर सोलापूरकर, सप महाविद्यालयामधून निवृत्त झालेले सर्व सन्माननीय प्राध्यापक बंधू भगिनी, आणि केवळ हा कार्यक्रम डॉक्टर संजयोत आपटे यांच्या पुस्तकाच्या प्रकाशनाचा आहे या एका वाक्यावर या ठिकाणी उपस्थित झालेले सर्व बंधू भगिनी, श्रोते, तुम्हा सगळ्यांचं मी सप महाविद्यालयाच्या या परिसरामध्ये आणि या हॉलमध्ये मनापासून स्वागत करतो. 1 ऑगस्ट 2025 हा दिवस माझ्या आयुष्यात अतिशय महत्त्वाचा होता, कारण त्या दिवशी मी या महाविद्यालयाचा प्राचार्य म्हणून रुजू झालो. पण माझ्यासाठी छोटीशी खंत अशी होती की 31 जुलै रोजी या महाविद्यालयामध्ये अत्यंत सक्षमपणे काम करणारी एक व्यक्ती निवृत्त झाली होती. आणि हसत हसत त्या व्यक्तीने 1 ऑगस्टला मला सांगितलं की मी काल निवृत्त झाली. मी म्हटलं आता हे शुभेच्छा देताय की काय करताय? पण मला आनंद या गोष्टीचा झाला की त्या दुसऱ्या एका कोर्सच्या निमित्तानं पुन्हा या प्रक्रियेमध्ये सम्मिलित झाल्या. BA सिव्हिल सर्व्हिसेस हा एक युनिक कोर्स त्यांनी सुरू केला. डॉक्टर उमराणीकर सरांचं मार्गदर्शन त्याच्यामध्ये लाभते आहे. आणि त्यानिमित्तानं पुन्हा एकदा डॉक्टर संजयोत आपटे यांच्यासोबत काम करण्याची मला संधी प्राप्त झाली. त्यांच्यासोबत काम करताना मला असं जाणवलं की या बदलत्या काळामध्ये गेल्या 29 वर्षाच्या शिक्षण प्रक्रियेमध्ये राबवत असताना आता जेव्हा बदलतं शिक्षण मी बघतो तेव्हा माझ्या असं लक्षात येतं की कधीकधी आपल्या शिक्षकाला देखील क्या बोल रहा है बिडू असं म्हणून संबोधन करणारा विद्यार्थी, त्याच्या खांद्यावर हात ठेवून सिगरेट शेअर करणारे शिक्षक, किंवा आपल्या शिक्षकाची पाठ फिरली त्याबरोबर किंवा त्याच्या तोंडावर देखील वाटेल तसं त्याला बोलणारे विद्यार्थी बदलत्या काळामध्ये निर्माण होत असताना शिक्षक नेमका कसा असावा याचं मूर्तिमंत उदाहरण म्हणजे डॉक्टर संजोत आपटे आहेत. कारण माझ्यासमोर त्या जेव्हा माझ्या बाजूला उभ्या होत्या तेव्हा पुणे विभागाच्या माननीय विभागीय संचालक शीतल उगले किंवा तेलंगणा राज्याचे डायरेक्टर जनरल ऑफ पोलीस महेश भागवत, दिल्लीच्या हायर एज्युकेशनमध्ये काम करणारे श्रीमान आनंद पाटील किंवा पुण्याच्या इन्कम टॅक्स डिपार्टमेंटचे सगळ्यात मोठे ऑफिसर विवेक वाडकर, हे सगळे येऊन जेव्हा यांच्या पाया पडत होते तेव्हा माझ्या लक्षात येतो की यांचं महत्त्व काय आहे. शिक्षक कसा असावा यासोबत शिक्षकांना आपल्या विद्यार्थ्यासोबतचं नातं कसं जपावं याचं देखील उत्तम उदाहरण म्हणजे डॉक्टर संजोत आपटे आहेत. हा जो कनेक्ट आहे ना, आज आपण सगळेजण शिक्षण क्षेत्राची कुठल्या ना कुठल्या प्रकारे संबंधित आहोत. आपल्या वर्गामध्ये विद्यार्थी नाहीत, कॉलेजमध्ये आले तर ते वर्गात बसत नाहीत, बसले तरी देखील त्यांचं आपल्या शिकवण्याकडे लक्ष नाही. मी सगळ्या नकारात्मक गोष्टी सांगतोय असं नाही, पण आजही असे काही विद्यार्थी आहेत की जे विद्यार्थी खऱ्या अर्थानं या बदलत्या शिक्षण प्रक्रियेला भारताच्या बदलत्या परिस्थितीनुसार स्वतःला रिप्रेझेंट करतात. पण त्या रिप्रेझेंटेशनमध्ये काही खंबीर शिक्षक लागतात की जे त्या विद्यार्थ्यांना योग्य मार्गदर्शन करू शकतात. त्यापैकी एक संजोत आपटे आहेत. आणि म्हणून मला या कार्यक्रमामध्ये संमिलित होताना नितांत अभिमान वाटतो की माझ्यासोबत काम करणाऱ्या, माझ्यापेक्षा वरिष्ठ असणाऱ्या, ज्यांच्याकडून अनेक गोष्टी शिकता येतील अशा असणाऱ्या डॉक्टर संजोत आपटे यांचं मोठेपण आणि त्या मोठेपणाची पावती मिळवण्यासाठी त्यांना वेगळं काही करण्याचीच गरज नाही. कारण त्यासाठी त्यांच्यावर प्रेम करणाऱ्या सगळ्या विद्यार्थ्यांनी आणि सहकाऱ्यांनी आजचा हा सुंदर दिवस निर्माण केला. याच्यापेक्षा काय सुंदर पावती पाहिजे मॅडम तुमच्या कामाला. हो, फार भाग्यवान आहात तुम्ही. पण ते भाग्य तुम्ही कमावलेलं आहे. ते भाग्य तुम्ही इतक्या वर्षामध्ये तुमच्या विद्यार्थ्यांसोबत प्रेमानं जोडलेला जो बंध आहे ना, तो सक्षमपणे अजूनही टिकवून ठेवलेला आहे. अजूनही टिकवून ठेवलेला आहे. पुणे विभागामध्ये असणाऱ्या 5 जिल्ह्याच्या 5 कलेक्टरना शीतल उगले बाहेर 15 मिनटं थांबायला सांगतात की 15 मिनटं तुम्ही माझी वाट पहा, कारण माझ्या मॅडम आल्या आहेत, त्यांच्याशी मी बोलणार आहे, नंतर तुमच्याशी बोलीन. ही ताकद आहे. ही ताकद आहे शिक्षकाची. ही ताकद आहे त्यांनी निर्माण केलेल्या या भाव वर्तुळाची. आणि ते वर्तुळ त्यांनी ज्या ताकदीनं टिकवलं ना, त्याबद्दल खरंच मला मनापासून अभिमान वाटतो. बदलत्या काळामध्ये अनेक नकारात्मक गोष्टी मनावर येत असतात, समोर येत असतात. विद्यार्थ्यांची रूपं देखील आम्ही बघतोय. पण हे सगळं होत असताना शिक्षक हा किती प्रभावीपणे एखादी गोष्ट करू शकतो आणि त्यानं जर ते केलं तर त्याच्यामध्ये हे सगळं बदलण्याची ताकद राहू शकते, हे देखील त्यांच्या कामामधून आम्हाला दिसतं. आपल्याला मान्यवरांचं ऐकायचं आहे, त्यामुळे मला दिलेल्या 2 मिनिटामध्ये 3 मिनिटाची सूट मी घेतली प्राचार्य म्हणून. परंतु शेवटी एकच गोष्ट सांगतो की त्यांच्या व्यक्तिमत्वाचा जेव्हा मी अभ्यास करतो तेव्हा एक गोष्ट आवर्जून या ठिकाणी सांगावीशी वाटते की कुठल्याही परिस्थितीमध्ये संजोत आपटे यांचा बॅलन्स गेलेला मी कधीही पाहिलेला नाही. नेव्हर, कधीच नाही. म्हणजे राग येतो, चिडतो आपण ॲडमिनिस्ट्रेशनमध्ये, सर अनेक गोष्टी कराव्या लागतात, कधी कधी तर मुद्दाम आवाज चढवावा लागतो. यांचा कधीच चढलेला पाहिला नाही मी. किंबहुना त्यांचा एक शब्द तर कायम माझ्या स्मरणात राहिला की आम्ही सोबत काम करत होतो, काही टफ टाईम येतात कार्यक्रमाच्या आयोजनामध्ये की असं कसं झालं, असं व्हायला नको होतं, असं वगैरे होत असताना ह्या त्याबद्दल तक्रार करत नाहीत. अनेक विद्यार्थ्यांना तो शब्द माहिती असेल, मी तो सांगतो. त्या वाव म्हणतात. ते दिल्लीला शिकले असतील, आय डोंट नो, पण वाव म्हणतात ते. पण मला ते इतकं छान वाटतं की मला चीड आलेली असते त्या प्रसंगी की हे असं का झालं, पण त्या वाव म्हणतात. आणि त्यांनी वाव म्हटल्यानंतर मग मी पण रिलॅक्स होतो. ही इतकं मोठी ताकद त्यांच्याकडे आहे. मी त्यांना मनापासून शुभेच्छा देतो. आपण सगळ्यांचं, आपल्या सगळ्यांचं मनापासून स्वागत करतो. ज्या 4-5 बेलसरे मॅडमच्या नेतृत्वामध्ये तुमची जी टीम आहे, तुम्ही तर कमाल केली खरंच की अशा पद्धतीनं आपल्या शिक्षकांनी केलेल्या समर्थ कामाची मानवंदना जर अशी देत असू ना आपण, तर मला असं वाटतं ती मानवंदना आमच्यासारख्या अनेक शिक्षकांना मिळावी. यासाठी मिळेल की नाही माहीत नाही, पण प्रयत्न निश्चित करू. आणि त्या प्रयत्नांसाठीचा दीपस्तंभ तुम्ही असाल. त्यामुळे दीपस्तंभ रूपी काम केलेल्या आपटे मॅडमना मी मनापासून शुभेच्छा देतो. त्यांचं काम असंच खूप चालू राहील. 30 सेकंद. म्हणजे मला का सांगावंसं वाटतं माहिती आहे का, की अनेक तरुण शिक्षक जे काम करत नाही तर ते त्या करतात. पुणे विद्यापीठामध्ये ड्युअल डिग्री नावाचा नवीन कन्सेप्ट, की एका वेळी 2 डिग्र्या घेता येतील, हा सगळ्यात पहिल्यांदा सप महाविद्यालयात सुरू झाला आणि तो यांनी सुरू केला. शिव इज इन्स्ट्रुमेंटल फॉर दॅट. म्हणजे आता पुढे ड्युअल डिग्री हा जो UGCचा कन्सेप्ट सगळीकडे लागवला जाणार आहे ना, त्याचे डॉक्युमेंट देखील आम्हीच तयार करतोय सध्या. याच्यामध्ये ह्या पुढाकार घेतात. 60 वर्षाचं झाल्यानंतर काय करायचं, आता कशाला उगाच वेळ घालवायचा, काहीतरी करूयात असं न करता जमेल तेवढे नवीन उद्यमशील प्रयोग, जमेल तेवढ्या गोष्टी मग यांच्यामुळे शक्य झालं. BS सिव्हिल सर्व्हिसेस या कोर्सला मागच्या वर्षी उमराणीकर सर आपल्याला माहिती आहे COEP मधले 2 पोरं ॲडमिटेड होते आमच्याकडे. ते इंजिनिअरिंगही करत होते आणि आमच्याकडे BE सिव्हिल सर्व्हिसेस करत होते. याच्या मागचा एकमेव फोर्स म्हणजे डॉक्टर संजोत आपटे. हे असं काम करणारा शिक्षक भेटला की मन भरून बोलावंसं वाटतं, पण यांच्याकडे पाहिल्यावर थांबावंसंही वाटतं आणि थांबावं लागेल. आणि म्हणून त्यांना मनापासून शुभेच्छा देतो. या दीपस्तंभ रूपी शिक्षकामध्ये असणारी प्रेरणा आम्हालाही थोडीफार मिळावी ही परमेश्वरचरणी प्रार्थना करतो आणि शब्दांना विराम देतो. धन्यवाद.
Thank you, Dr. Moril. Many of us have been already wowed by Dr. Apte since almost 1997-98. So for us, it is a part and parcel of the whole process. That's what I said, that we have been already wowed. Thank you, Dr. Moril. It's now finally the wait is over and we will be releasing the book. I request the entire editorial team to come up on the stage for the release of the book. The entire editorial team, if they can come up on the stage. And the publisher. And the editorial team along with all the members of the publishing house.
आपण ठीक आहे, ये ना.
We are really happy to have this commemorative volume or the book published because it provides really wonderful insights in different dimensions of international relations, the political, economic, geopolitical, and many of the other dimensions. Thank you everybody for your support. I would like to now request Professor Paranjpe to felicitate Professor Apte. मला वाटतं गुरुकडून शिष्याचा होणारा हा खऱ्या अर्थाने सन्मान आणि ज्या शिष्याचा सन्मान होतोय त्या शिष्यांचे अनेक शिष्य इथे आहेत. गुरु आणि शिष्य दोघांसाठी अतिशय अभिमानाचा आणि आनंदाचा क्षण. The book actually has been written by really renowned scholars and experts. It is absolutely our joy, and we are happy to welcome all of these authors here. Of course, it is not possible to call upon each and every author, but on behalf of the editorial team, I would like to request Jinjuman Prasannan to come up on the stage and accept our felicitation as a representative from all the authors. Professor Uttara Sahasrabuddhe, Professor Rashmi Bhure, Mukta Kulkarni, and I request Dr. Moril to felicitate Jinjuman Prasannan. Mukta Kulkarni and Tukaram Jadhav sir, Alok Oak, Pankaj Panse, Dr. Pranita Pathak, Dr. Neha Agashe, Dr. Madhura Arekar, Rohit Bokil, and of course Jinjuman. All of these have contributed by writing wonderful articles in the book. I now request Dr. Neha Agashe to introduce Professor Paranjpe.
Thank you. Good evening to all present here. It's a privilege to welcome Dr. Shrikant Paranjpe, one of India's most distinguished scholars in the field of international relations, strategic affairs, and security studies. He's an eminent academician whose career has shaped generations of students that also include Apte ma'am. Paranjpe sir is a scholar whose contributions have enriched both academia and the public discourse. Professor Paranjpe retired as the head of the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies and as the director of Yashwantrao Chavan National Center of International Security and Defense Analysis, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. His academic journey has taken him to some of the world's leading institutions, including George Washington University as a Fulbright postdoctoral fellow, Colorado College as a visiting professor, and Stellenbosch University, South Africa, as a research fellow. He also continues to contribute to global academic community through his advisory and editorial roles at the Nelson Mandela University and Scientia Militaria. An accomplished author and respected public intellectual, Dr. Paranjpe has enriched the discipline through his numerous books, research publications, and thoughtful analysis of international security, strategic studies, and global politics. Currently, he has initiated a course on national security in Marathi on Swayam portal that can be pursued by any undergraduate student, and you must if you're interested in getting your basics right on national security. Beyond his impressive academic achievements, Dr. Paranjpe is admired for his generosity as a mentor, his humility, and his ability to make complex ideas accessible to learners and scholars alike. It is an honor to have you with us, sir, and we are deeply grateful that you have agreed to share your insights. Kindly address the audience. Thank you.
Dignitaries on the dais and friends, don't take Neha very seriously. When I was asked to come and talk on international relations for about 20-30 minutes, I really did not know why I was asked, except that I had written a foreword. More important, since what I had in mind when I wrote the foreword was basically that here is a collection of articles written by some of the admirers of the felicitation volume. They are worth it, good articles, and I thought I should write something about it. Believe me, I am probably one of the few persons who has read the whole book because I had to write a foreword. I come from, when I'm talking on international relations, I realize I come from a very different generation. ancient. So why have you called this old man? I mean, what is this aspect of international relations that I want to share with you? कारण मला एकच आठवतं की कुठल्याही गोष्टीबद्दल बोललं तर माझ्या मुलाचं एकच उत्तर असायचं, बाबा तुला काही समजत नाही. And that is something which kept me alive, because then I had to read, I had to try to keep updated. This generation, and a lot was mentioned about the digital age, even about publication, digital age and things about publication. I represent an age when I relied on newspapers, on basic textbooks. मी आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंध याचा अभ्यास करताना पहिल्यांदा जेव्हा मला तो कोर्स करायला लागला, थिअरी ऑफ इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्स, मला आठवतं our teacher K.P. Mishra, the book which some of you have read. The first lecture he gave us a long list of articles on theory of international relations, about 10 articles or 15 articles. And he said that, look, you have to read them, summarize them, and then after 1 week we'll start the lectures. ही जी कन्सेप्ट आहे की तुम्हाला एखादा विषय समजून घ्यायचा असेल तर तुम्ही त्याचं वाचन करा. कशाचं वाचन करा? तर बेसिक थिओरिटिकल कन्सेप्च्युअल इश्यूज तुमचे क्लिअर पाहिजेत. ही जी संकल्पना आहे ही, sorry to say, but it is an old concept which is now not followed by most of the students. And again, sorry to say, most of the teachers. It is an instant age. And as I said, I come from an age of a telephone, I come from an age in landline, आता तुम्ही त्याला म्हणता, आम्ही त्याला टेलिफोन म्हणायचो. I come from an age when Doordarshan was only channel that I looked at. There was no internet. To me, for a very long time, Google, if you typed a word and you got 1,000 things feedback, for me it was magic, black magic perhaps, but it was magic. की ह्या अशा गोष्टी तुम्हाला मिळतात. Fax was a revolution for me. Today you talk of a Facebook, you talk of Telegram, you talk of internet, you talk of social thing. त्यामुळे खूप गोष्टी सोप्या झाल्यात असं आपल्याला वाटतं. आज बरेचसे जण ChatGPT किंवा AIचा वापर करतात आणि त्याच्यावरनं काय लिहित असतात. Why am I talking all of this about international relations? Let me explain, and this is a rambling of an old man, if you want to put it that way. I read an article about AI helping sugarcane production in Maharashtra. चांगला व्यवस्थित लांबलचक लेख होता की ऊस उत्पादनासाठी AIचा कसा वापर केला आणि ते कसं. मला ते समजलं नाही. मी म्हटलं AIचा नक्की काय वापर केला हो? म्हणून मी त्या रिपोर्टरला गाठलं. म्हटलं काय वापर केला हो AIचा त्याच्यासाठी, मी काय सांगू शकाल का? ही वॉज व्हेरी ऑनेस्ट. ही सेड मलाही माहिती नाही, मला जे सांगितलं ते मी आपलं लिहिलं. त्यामुळे AIचं तंत्रज्ञान वापरून तुम्ही काहीतरी करता, याचा अर्थ नक्की काय करता? तुम्हाला तरी माहिती असतं की तिथे काय आहे काय नाही. हाऊ मच ऑफ रियालिटी ऑफ इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्स डू यू रिअली नो? Why I am saying this is because history or international relations or political science, there are no facts. It is all interpretation. It is all perception. मला ह्या गोष्टीबद्दल असं वाटतं म्हणून मी ते लिहितो. माझा हा दृष्टिकोन आहे. I'll give you a very simple example. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, आता ancient person, or take Prabhakaran, relatively less ancient for you. हे दोघं जण जेव्हा लढत होते तेव्हा they were dubbed as terrorist or separatist or whatever. बांगलादेश रियालिटी झाली म्हणून तीच व्यक्ती स्वातंत्र्य सैनिक झाला. तामिल इलाम रियालिटी झालं असतं तर तीच व्यक्ती स्वातंत्र्य सैनिक झाला असतं. बिकॉज तामिल इलाम वॉज नॉट पॉसिबल, ही बिकेम अ टेररिस्ट. शेवटी तो दृष्टिकोन आहे. एखादा तामिळ श्रीलंकेमधला प्रभाकरनला फ्रीडम फायटर म्हणूनच बघणार. It is a perception where you sit. If you're sitting in Delhi, how you look at Pakistan, or if you're sitting in Islamabad, how you look at India, are perceptions. There are no factual aspects in international relations. It is how you perceive. What do you know about Iran, for example, what they are doing? What do you know about Russia? Why are they fighting Ukraine? तुम्हाला आणि मला जी बातम्या मिळतात, मग तुम्ही टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया वाचा, इंडियन एक्सप्रेस वाचा, हिंदू वाचा, कुठलाही पेपर वाचा किंवा मराठी पेपर वाचा, टी व्ही बघा. इट इज आयदर BBC or it is New York Times or it is Washington Post or whatever. तुम्हाला रशियन बातम्या रशियाच्याबद्दल मिळत नाहीत आणि तुम्ही त्या वाचत नाहीत. इराण आणि त्या पश्चिम आशियामध्ये जे काय चाललं आहे, वॉट एव्हर दॅट इज गोइंग ऑन, you will get news in terms of what Trump is doing or what Americans are saying or what Europeans are saying. You will also get what Israel is saying as Americans want Israel to say. But you will not get what Iran is saying. You will get it in a different form if you really look at it. त्यामुळे नक्की काय चाललंय जगात हे आपल्याला समजेल की नाही हे याच्याबद्दल शंका आहे. अगदी पूर्वी मला आठवतं, आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंध का शिकायचे हा प्रश्न मी बऱ्याच मुलांनी मला विचारला होता की वाय, आय मीन व्हॉट इज देअर, समथिंग आउट देअर, आपल्याला काय संबंध आहे. जस्ट थिंक ऑफ इट, देयर इज अ स्मॉल टेररिस्ट अटॅक समवेअर, किंवा काश्मीरमध्ये पेहलगाममध्ये काहीतरी झालं, हे तर डोमेस्टिक आहे. की आपल्याकडच्या किमती वाढल्या, तेलाच्या किमती वाढल्या, हे तर डोमेस्टिक आहे. मग तुम्ही सरकारला दोष द्या, नका देऊ, त्यांनी वाढवल्या म्हणा. बट व्हाय डज दॅट हॅपन? दॅट हॅपन्स बिकॉज समथिंग इज हॅपनिंग समवेअर एल्स. कुठेतरी पश्चिम आशियामध्ये काहीतरी ते होर्मुज नावाचं काहीतरी ठिकाण आहे, तिथे प्रॉब्लेम्स आहेत आणि त्याच्यातनं आपल्याला प्रॉब्लेम्स निर्माण होतात. तेल मिळत नाही, त्याच्यातनं आपल्या पेट्रोलच्या किमती वाढतात. सम ऑफ दोज ऑफ द ओल्डर जनरेशन माईट रिमेंबर 1973 ओपेक ऑइल क्रायसिस, अरब इस्रायल वॉर, की तेव्हा पहिल्यांदा किमती वाढल्या पेट्रोलच्या. द न्यूअर जनरेशन विल रिमेंबर नाव. दे माइट ब्लेम द BJP गव्हर्मेंट फॉर दॅट, फॉर इन्क्रीजिंग प्राइसेस ऑफ ऑइल, बट ॲट दॅट अर्लियर इट वॉज द काँग्रेस गव्हर्मेंट डेट रेज द प्राईस, कारण तेव्हा इलाज नाही. हा जो सगळा भाग आहे हा डोमेस्टिकच आहे असं नाही, इंटरनॅशनल पण आहे. देयर इज अ होल कनेक्शन बिटवीन व्हॉट इज हॅपनिंग इंटरनॅशनली अँड व्हॉट इज हॅपनिंग डोमेस्टिकली. आणि म्हणून मग आपल्याला कुठेतरी याची जाणीव होते की हे काय गोष्टी आहेत हे आपल्याला समजलं पाहिजे. हाऊ इग्नोरंट कॅन वी बी? अँड आय विल गिव्ह एन एक्झाम्पल, अँड दिस इज अ ॲक्च्युअल एक्झाम्पल विच आय एम गिव्हिंग यू. नो एक्झॅजरेशन. सिव्हिल सर्व्हिसेसचा कोर्स चालवता तुम्ही. ग्रॅज्युएट झालेल्या मुलांचे आम्ही इंटरव्ह्यूज घेत होतो आणि एक नकाशा बोर्डवर लावला होता. मी एंट्रन्ससाठी इंटरव्ह्यूज घेत होतो आणि ही जुनी गोष्ट आहे अर्थात. तेव्हा श्रीलंकेचे काही प्रॉब्लेम्स होते म्हणून आम्ही त्या मुलांना विचारलं की नकाशावरती, जगाचा नकाशा, यू शो मी श्रीलंका ऑन द मॅप. पहिल्या 2-3 मुलांना ते जमलं नाही. SB कुलकर्णी तेव्हा ऑनररी डिरेक्टर होते. ही सेड, अरे मला श्रीकांतजी म्हणायचे, श्रीकांतजी त्यांना जमत नाही, ठीक आहे आपण त्यांना भारत दाखवायला सांगू. म्हटलं पुढचा मुलगा, पुढचा जो कोण आला त्यांना म्हटलं कॅन यू शो इंडिया ऑन दिस मॅप? ही सेड येस. तो नकाशापाशी गेला आणि त्यांनी असं बोट वरपासून फिरवायला सुरुवात केली. मी म्हटलं काय करतोयस? एवढ्या भागात नाही आहे सर म्हटलं. दॅट इज द ट्रॅजेडी ऑफ ग्रॅज्युएट्स इन इंडिया. MA Geography students from my university, when they sought admission in my department a few years ago, and when we used to talk to them and interview them, we wear 5 stars for the Pune University. One of the questions which my colleague asked the student was, can you name 5 countries of Europe? And the first country that person named was Yugoslavia. The second country that was named was Indonesia. दॅट इज द ट्रॅजेडी ऑफ वॉट वी टीच, वॉट वी लर्न. त्यामुळे आपण काय शिकतो आणि केव्हा आणि कशा पद्धतीने शिकतो, आणि दीज आर नॉट एक्झॅजरेशन, दिस इज नॉट, ह्या थापा नाही मारत आहे, हे ॲक्च्युअल घडलेल्या घटना आहेत. असं होतं, त्याच्यामुळे UPSC आणि MPSCला जाणाऱ्या मुलं मुली करंट इव्हेंटसाठी पुस्तकं वापरतात आणि त्याच्यातनं तोंडपाठ करण्याचा प्रयत्न करतात. करंट इव्हेंट्स तसे नसतात. करंट इव्हेंट्ससाठी तुम्ही वर्षभर जर पेपर वाचलात नीट तर तुमचे करंट इव्हेंट्स तसंही तयार होतात. हो, कन्सेप्च्युअल क्लॅरिटी ऑफ एनी सब्जेक्ट, आणि हे मला खूप पूर्वी प्रोफेसर रामबापटांनी सांगितलं होतं की इफ यू रिअली वॉन्ट टू अंडरस्टँड एनी सब्जेक्ट you must have a clear conceptual clarity about what you are reading. म्हणजे त्या विषयाच्या थिओरेटिकल डायमेन्शन्स, त्या विषयाच्या कन्सेप्च्युअल डायमेन्शन्स तुला जर समजल्या तर पुढचं सगळं तुझं सोपं होईल. यू कॅन इंटरप्रिट थिंग्स. फॅक्ट्स यू विल गेट, इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्स फॅक्ट्स यू गेट इन एनी केस, बट गेटिंग दोज फॅक्ट्स इज वन थिंग. Interpreting them, because I said there's no such thing as factually correct, there's always interpretation. Interpreting them is what you do on the basis of what you have read. Your conceptual clarity has to be there, and then each one of you, me and each one of you, has a certain world view. की आपला स्वतःचा एक जागतिक दृष्टिकोन असतो, तो हळूहळू इव्हॉल्व्ह होतो. मग तुम्ही कुठल्याही स्वरूपात तुम्ही ते बघा, दॅट इज इमटेरियल. मग अगदी तुम्ही मार्क्सवादी असाल नसाल कसे असाल, बट यू हॅव अ वर्ल्ड व्ह्यू, अँड इट इज फ्रॉम दॅट वर्ल्ड व्ह्यू ऑर इट इज फ्रॉम दॅट युअर परसेप्शन्स यू लुक ॲट थिंग्स. अँड वेन यू आर लुकिंग ॲट थिंग्स फ्रॉम दॅट पर्स्पेक्टिव्ह यू आर ट्राईंग टू अंडरस्टँड वॉट इज देअर. रिमेंबर, आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंधांमध्ये डायलॉग हा एक मेजर फॅक्टर असतो. आणि dialogue is a two-way process. You have to have a dialogue across the board to understand what is there, basically because your perception and my perception can differ, and unless we spell out what we feel, what we think, what we argue, we will not be able to understand the whole system in terms of what is there. Don't look at international relations as a separate discipline from what it is part of, मगाशी स्वयंचा उल्लेख झाला. वी हॅव जस्ट कम्प्लिटेड अ कोर्स ऑन नॅशनल सिक्युरिटी, तो मराठीतून केलेला आहे, आणि इट इज अन ओपन कोर्स, एनीबडी कॅन जॉईन इन, त्याला काही खर्च नाही आहे. वन ऑफ द इश्यूज विच वी वेंट इन टू वेन वी टॉक्ड ऑफ नॅशनल सिक्युरिटी इज पार्ट ऑफ social sciences, parts of everything. One of the issues that we talked of was whom does it affect? मग एखादा टेक्नॉलॉजीचा मुलगा असेल किंवा मुलगी असेल, तो IITचा ग्रॅज्युएट असेल, तो कुठल्या इंजिनिअरिंग कॉलेजमधून ती व्यक्ती झाली असेल, आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंध आणि त्या अनुषंगाने राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा हा विषय त्याला समजला पाहिजे. कारण टुडे when you're talking of international relations, you're going to talk of technology. And technology is not just your AI, not just your all kinds of technological innovations. Drone is an innovation. We never talked of drone warfare. We used to talk of air warfare and whatnot. Drone is an innovation that is part of technological innovations in international relations. You're going to hear two scholars talking on geopolitics and political economy or economics. That is part of international relations. You cannot understand international relations without understanding political economy. मला आठवतं डिफेन्स स्टडीजच्या कोर्समध्ये वी हॅव अ कोर्स ऑन डिफेन्स इकॉनॉमिक्स, अँड वेन वी वर मेकिंग अ सिलेबस, I used to argue that you must make the student understand what are the fundamentals of Indian economy before you talk of defense economics. अँड क्वाईट अ फ्यू ऑफ द मेंबर्स ऑफ द बोर्ड ऑफ स्टडी सेट की अरे ते इकॉनॉमिक्समधलं झालं, आपण त्यांना इकॉनॉमिक्स कुठे शिकवायचं म्हणलं, त्यांनी इकॉनॉमिक्स समजून घेतलं तर त्याला डिफेन्स इकॉनॉमिक्स समजेल. तसंच डिफेन्स इकॉनॉमिक्स समजायला तुम्हाला बेसिक इकॉनॉमिक्स समजायला लागतं, तर तुम्हाला पॉलिटिकल इकॉनॉमी समजेल. तेलाची किमती का वाढतात ते समजेल, किंवा एखाद्या गोष्टीचे प्रॉब्लेम्स का आर्थिक समस्या का निर्माण होतात ते समजेल. सिमिलरली जिओपॉलिटिक्स, आपलं राष्ट्र कुठे आहे. वन ऑफ द थिंग्स विच द नेव्हल ऑफिसर्स युजली टॉक ऑफ, वेन यू लुक ॲट द मॅप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, मी ते बऱ्याच वेळा करतो की तो जगाचा नकाशा उलटा लावा. तुम्ही जगाचा नकाशा उलटा लावलात की तुम्हाला भारताचा संपूर्ण वरचा समुद्र किनारा दिसतो, आणि देन यू रिअलाइज दॅट ॲज जिओपॉलिटिक्स अँड इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्स, इंडिया मे बी कन्सर्न्ड अबाउट द नॉर्दर्न फ्रॉन्टियर्स, but India has to be concerned about the Indian Ocean also, because there's a huge expanse in the south of India that will impact you only if you look at the map in a different manner. त्यामुळे नकाशाचा अभ्यास करणं हा एक इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्सचा भाग आहे. म्हणजे युरोपमध्ये किती राष्ट्र आहेत हा प्रश्न बाजूला पडला, पण नकाशाचा अभ्यास करणं आणि टू अंडरस्टँड वॉट द होल डायमेन्शन्स ऑफ युअर ॲस्पेक्ट्स आर. आणि त्या जिओपॉलिटिक्सवरती ते बोलणार आहेत, मी त्याच्या एरियामध्ये जात नाही, पण दॅट इज ऑल पार्ट ऑफ दिस. पॉलिटिकल सायन्स, युअर एरिया, युअर कोर एरिया. आय डिड एम ए पॉलिटिकल सायन्स बाय द वे. पॉलिटिकल सायन्स देखील एखाद्या राष्ट्रामध्ये आंतरराष्ट्रीय व्यवस्थेबद्दल निर्णय कसे होतात, कोण घेतं. मग एक मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एक्सटर्नल अफेअर्स आहे, एक मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ डिफेन्स आहे, एक होम मिनिस्ट्री आहे. त्याच्या व्यतिरिक्त तुम्ही बघता का देर इज अ डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ ॲटॉमिक एनर्जी, देर इज अ डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ सायन्स अँड टेक्नॉलॉजी. हे देखील त्या आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंधांच्या संदर्भातला भाग आहेत. सो an average student, an average learner, whether whatever discipline you belong to, whether you are in environment, whether you are in whatever, international relations is going to impinge on your perspectives. आज जर तुम्ही बघितलं तर क्रिटिकल एरियाज म्हणून तुम्ही कुठे बघता जेव्हा आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंधांचा अभ्यास करता, क्रिटिकल एरियाज काय बघता. तुम्ही हार्डकोर एरियाजबद्दल बोलला तर तुम्ही एकदम टेररिझमकडे जाता. पुन्हा परसेप्शन्सचा भाग आहे. दहशतवाद हा का निर्माण होतो, कशा पद्धतीने खेळला जातो. देर इज अ होल बिझनेस ऑफ टेररिझम. हाऊ इज इट प्लेड. विचार प्रणाली, वेन यू आर टॉकिंग ॲट पॉलिटिकल सायन्स, आयडियोलॉजी ओ वर्ल्ड व्ह्यू, विचार प्रणाली ही ह्या दहशतवादाच्या संदर्भात अतिशय महत्त्वाची कामगिरी करते. नो, अनलेस you understand the ideology, whether it is religious, non-religious, whatever, unless you understand their ideology, why are they arguing in a particular manner, what are they fighting for, what is their ideological mindset, त्यांची मनं कशाने पेटलेली आहेत की ते का लढा करतात असा. unless you understand that, you will not be able to understand what is counter terrorism. Not many years ago, Tony Blair, as Prime Minister of Britain, लंडन बॉम्बिंग झाले होते तेव्हा त्यांनी जे वक्तव्य केलं अँड वॉट काउंटर आर्ग्युमेंट ही स्टार्टेड, ही सेड, लुक, दीज पीपल आर ब्रिटिश सिटिझन्स, मे बी फर्स्ट जनरेशन, सेकंड जनरेशन. अमेरिकेतल्या 9/11 सारखे नाही आहेत, हे बाहेरनं आलेले नाहीत, आमचीच लोकं आमच्यावरती हल्ला करतायत, ते एका विचाराने पेटलेले आहेत. दे आर इग्नाइटेड बाय अ सर्टन religious ideology, fine. We need to counter that with counter ideas. So you're countering that with counter ideas. You cannot fight them with weapons. That is what you have to understand. In case of Britain, they talked of British nationalism. In case of India, we'll have to talk of Indian nationalism. I do not know whether you can define Indian nationalism. I have tried. I am not very successful at all times. But terrorism is one area. And there are other frontline areas. You have environment. मग त्याच्यात नाटकं करणारे खूप लोक आहेत एन्व्हायरमेंटच्या संदर्भात, इकॉलॉजिकल एटसेट्रा. आय एम नॉट नेमिंग देम, बट ती करणारी खूप लोक आहेत. लॉट ऑफ पीपल आर गोइंग टू टेक ॲडव्हान्टेज ऑफ द होल इश्यू ऑफ एन्व्हायरमेंटल डायमेन्शन्स. But understand, environment is going to be a major issue in international relations today. Changing technology is also going to be a major issue. Frontier technologies, and not just defense technologies, civilian technologies, what you do every day. Whether it is your Facebook or whether it is social networking, आत्ताचा जो सगळा जो दिल्लीमध्ये जो काही प्रकार घडला, the first social networking activity which was successfully done was Anna Hazare. Use of media, social media. आत्ताचा जो घडला तो जर तुम्ही बघितला, its success is essentially based on a very different technology which is now in your hands. It is on your mobile. How much of it comes from outside, हे जे impinging factors असतात, बाहेरनं जे आपल्यावरती आघात होतात, हे आघात लष्करीच असतात असं नाही. हे आघात वैचारिक असतात. इग्नायटिंग माइंड्स ऑफ पीपल. हे आघात वैचारिक असतात आणि ते आघात तुम्ही तुमच्या मोबाईलवरती रोज बघता. यू गो ऑन यूट्यूब, तुम्ही एक गोष्ट बघितली की त्याच्यावरती तुम्हाला सातत्याने त्याच्यावरती तुम्हाला फीड केलं जातं. तुम्ही फोन बंद असून जर का काही गप्पा मारल्या तरी तुम्हाला त्याच्यावरती यूट्यूबवरती काय काय गोष्टी यायला लागतात. दॅट इज अ डिफरंट एज ऑफ टेक्नॉलॉजी. इट इज स्केरी, बट दॅट इज ऑल पार्ट ऑफ इंटरनॅशनल इश्यूज. त्याच्यात डोमेस्टिक आणि इंटरनॅशनल इश्यूज असे फरक नाही आहे. अँड दीज आर फ्रंटलाईन एरियाज. दॅट काइंड ऑफ अ टेक्नॉलॉजी, म्हणजे तुमच्यापैकी किती लोकांनी ते बघितलं आहे मला माहिती नाही. पूर्वी एक ती सिरीज असायची स्टार ट्रेक, कॅप्टन कर्क आणि व्हॉटेवर. त्याच्यात जो AIचा सिस्टमॅटिक वापर केलेला होता, वेदर इट इज स्पॉक और वेदर इट इज दॅट डेटा किंवा नंतरचे जे काही रोबोट्स होते, लुक ॲट वॉट वॉज बिंग प्रोजेक्टेड ॲट दॅट टाईम इन दॅट सिरीज. पहिल्या स्टार ट्रेकमध्ये मोबाईल फोनचा वापर सुरू झाला. तेव्हा मोबाईल फोन ही कोणालाही संकल्पना माहिती नव्हती. They did research with NASA and they said this is the frontline technology which will come. They were showing it in that first Star Trek. Similarly, the robots which are created in that Star Trek 1 or 2 or subsequently whatever, that is a frontline technology of international relations. तिथे तुम्ही जागतिक पातळीवरती म्हणता की आम्ही सगळे एकत्र आहोत, and there's a whole plurality of people coming into it. But that kind of an advance, ते जे advances at technology, they are the ones which are going to affect international relations. And as I said, not just in the area of security, in your day-to-day area, whether it अल निनोने तुम्हाला आज दुष्काळ पडणार आहे भारतात, किती बातम्या आल्या होत्या. आता पूर येतोय. So what kind of predictions? The question which was asked to me by a serious person was, were the Americans trying to fool us by saying that El Nino effect is drought? That is the kind of problem which is raised. My submission to you here, and there I'll stop because I'll ramble on. What I planned to talk today is not what I talked. It was essentially an informal rambling. What I want to suggest to you today is very simple. When you're looking at international relations, don't look at it as something way out. ह्या फेलिस्ट्रेशन व्हॉल्यूममध्ये वेगवेगळे आर्टिकल्स आहेत. त्याच्यात AIचं आहे, त्याच्यात टेक्नॉलॉजीचं आहे. त्यातले बरंचसं मला समजलं नाही, टू बी व्हेरी ऑनेस्ट. अँड बाबा तुला समजत नाही तो म्हणत होता ते खरं आहे. बरंचसं मला समजलं नाही. ट्राय टू अंडरस्टँड इट. इनफॅक्ट आय आस्क्ड अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल की अरे AI म्हणजे नक्की काय असतं रे, अँड हू क्रिएट्स दॅट. समबडी हॅज टू क्रिएट सम प्रोग्राम्स, अल्गोरिथम्स और वॉट एव्हर. द आन्सर इज, पूर्वी जे कोडिंग करायचे ना त्यांनाच आता अल्गोरिथम म्हणतात आणि ते तीच लोक आहेत. म्हटलं ठीक आहे, वॉट एव्हर. डोंट बी जस्ट इम्प्रेस्ड बाय what leaders are saying. Don't be impressed by what Trump is saying, for example. एक लक्षात घ्या, आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंधांचा अभ्यास करताना प्रत्येक राष्ट्र हे त्याच्या राष्ट्रहिताच्या आधारे काम करत असतं. ट्रम्प इज गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट अमेरिकन नॅशनल इंटरेस्ट. मॅगा जे काय असेल ते अमेरिकन नॅशनल इंटरेस्ट. you don't have to tell Americans that, look, what you're doing is going to be adverse to us. You can't tell Trump, look after Indian national interests. No. Each country is going to look after their national interests. हे कुठेतरी आपल्याला याची जाणीव ठेवली पाहिजे. म्हणजे ट्रम्पला शिव्या द्या नका देऊ, तो त्याचं काम करतोय. प्रत्येक राष्ट्र आपल्या राष्ट्रहितासाठी जर काम करत असेल तर आपल्यालाही आपल्या राष्ट्रहितासाठी काम करावं लागतं आणि लागेल. कोणीतरी आपलं राष्ट्रहित सांभाळेल आणि त्यांनी आमच्यावरती असं ह्या पद्धतीने करू नये, ह्या दृष्टीने तुम्ही विचार करू नका. भारताबद्दल जर तुम्ही बघत असाल आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंधाच्या चौकटात, तर भारताच्या राष्ट्रहिताबद्दल बोला, राष्ट्रहिताबद्दल बोला. आणि नॅशनल सिक्युरिटीबद्दल बोलताना एक लक्षात घ्या, इट इज नॉट जस्ट मिलिटरी सिक्युरिटी, इट इज पॉलिटिकल, इकॉनॉमिक, सोशल, कल्चरल, सिव्हिलायझेशनल. सुरक्षा ही व्यापक आहे आणि राष्ट्रहिताबद्दल जेव्हा बोलतात तेही तितकंच व्यापक आहे. आणि त्या दृष्टिकोनातनं आंतरराष्ट्रीय संबंधांकडे बघा. माझं राष्ट्र, माझं राष्ट्रहित काय आहे आणि ते सांभाळण्यासाठी आम्ही काय करू. समवेअर डाऊन द लाईन माय ओनली सजेशन टू यू इज, ॲडवाईस देत नाही, माय सजेशन टू इज अंडरस्टँड इंटरनॅशनल रिलेशन्स, रीड एव्हरीथिंग, बट ट्राय टू अंडरस्टँड अँड इंटरप्रेट इट फ्रॉम अन इंडियन पर्स्पेक्टिव्ह in terms of what is my national interest and what I can do to understand my national interest. परदेशी पुस्तकं वाचा हो, त्याच्याबद्दल काही नाही, पण ती पुस्तकं वाचून त्यांनी काय छान करतात हे बोलणं ठीक आहे. अंडरस्टँड what Indians have to do about Indian national interest in the world that is around. Thank you, Sanjyot. Thank you for inviting me here. I am not part of your new mobile revolution, so I really do not know a lot of things that are in the book. I tried to understand them. I might read them again. But as I said, I'm one of the few persons who have read the entire text. Thank you once again, and thank you for this patient hearing.
Thank you, Professor Paranjpe. It's always a pleasure to listen to Professor Paranjpe. It was definitely not rambling, and most definitely not rambling of an old man who called himself an ancient man, because just 4 years ago, Dr. Paranjpe was here for delivering 1st of August address on various dimensions of foreign policy, India's foreign policy. So you are relevant even today, and you will be relevant. Thank you very much. I now request Dr. Pranita Pathak to introduce our second speaker and eminent economist, Dr. Rupa Rege Nitsure.
Thank you, Arundhati ma'am. Good evening to all. It's a very different pleasure actually to introduce Dr. Rupa ma'am. Being a student of economics, that is, I consider myself as a great honor. I'll of course introduce her formally, but there's an informal connection. Ex-alumni of Ramnarayan Ruia College, Sister Concern Shikshan Prasarak Mandali, and of course Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics. So Pune and Pune's crowd is not new to Rupa ma'am. Dr. Rupa ma'am is one of the India's most respected economists, whose illustrious career spans more than 3.5 decades in banking, finance, economic policy, and academia. She has served as the Group Chief Economist and member of the Group Executive Council at L&T and Finance, and has previously held senior leadership positions as Chief Economist at Bank of Baroda and Senior Economist at ICICI and ICICI Bank. She has served on several prestigious committees constituted by Reserve Bank of India and Government of India, including the Expert Committee on Strengthening the Monetary Policy Framework, chaired by Dr. Urjit Patel. Dr. Rupa is equally admired as a scholar, educator, columnist, and author. A bilingual writer in English and Marathi, her acclaimed Marathi book Vittartha received the Maharashtra Sahitya Parishad Excellence Award. She continues academia through her association with leading institutions, including the Symbiosis School of Economics as Professor of Practice, and through her roles on several academic and editorial boards. Ma'am, your remarkable journey reflects intellectual excellence, visionary leadership, and unwavering commitment to public policy and education. We are deeply honored to have you with us today. I would now request Rupa ma'am to share her valuable insights on India's strategic response to global economic challenges. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. Thank you, Pranita, for a very kind introduction. I want to begin by thanking the organizing committee for the honor of inviting me here. I am especially happy that this event is taking place at an Shikshan Prasarak Mandali's college, as I completed both my junior and senior college education at Shikshan Prasarak Mandali's Ramnarayan Ruya College in Mumbai. So it's like a homecoming for me. At the very outset, I would like to sincerely congratulate Professor Sanjyot Apte for receiving this very, very special honor from our students. Only those receive such an honor when they have earned a place of deep respect in their students' hearts through their teaching and mentoring. So I should say, wow, congratulations. खूप हृदय आहे, अगदी मनापासून सांगते. The topic of my today's lecture actually is not understanding the economics of international relations. It is how India has responded strategically to myriad economic challenges that have impacted not just us as a country, but the global economy as a whole in recent times. So since 2020, we have seen that global economy has faced at least 4 major macroeconomic shocks. To begin with, the COVID-19 pandemic, which induced a slowdown, a recession. After that, severe supply chain disruptions globally. Then, the worldwide glut of liquidity, because central banks undertook printing of new money to support their economies, which eventually led to very high inflation, high interest rates, etc., because supply side response is always slow and tardy. And multi-regional geopolitical conflicts, beginning from Russia-Ukraine war, then Gaza-Israel conflict, then the recent West Asian conflict, etc., leading to huge disruptions. And the major one is, of course, the Donald Trump announcements on tariffs, the US administration's decisions about the tariffs. So all these geopolitical events led to huge disruptions in trade and energy sectors. So as, students of economics and economic policies, we have to look at both the immediate term and long-term implications of these global disturbances for India. So key near-term issues were, of course, surging crude and cooking gas prices. In India, of course, they were frozen because we are largely an administered economy, controlled economy. आणि तुम्ही म्हणालात तसं हे परसेप्शन नाही, कारण ते खरंच फेस करावं लागतं. प्राइसेस वाढतात किंवा कमी होतात, त्याची रूट कॉजेस काही असली तरीही. वीकनिंग फॉरेन इन्व्हेस्टमेंट्स, बिकॉज इंडिया इज अ डेव्हलपिंग कंट्री. आपण विकसनशील देश आहोत, त्यामुळे आपल्याकडे परदेशातनं जे इन्व्हेस्टर्स गुंतवणूक करतात त्यांच्यासाठी अशा काळामध्ये विकसनशील देश हे रिस्की ठरतात. तिथे गुंतवणूक करून विशेष फायदा होणार नाही असं वाटतं, म्हणून मग ते कॅपिटल काढून घ्यायला लागतात. सो वी फेस्ड ह्यूज flight of capital from our debt and equity markets that put pressure on our currency. आपण रुपयाचं अवमूल्यन झालेलं बघतो, डिप्रिसिएशन. And of course, broader, shipping and logistic cost, transportation charges वाढतात. एकंदर महागाई सगळीकडून आपल्याला ती प्रेशर्स येतात. जरी तुम्ही पेट्रोल आणि ह्याच्या किमती हे केल्या तरी बाकी रॉ मटेरियल्सच्या वगैरे वाढतात, कारण आखातातनं आपले फार मोठ्या प्रमाणात आपण आयात करतो. निर्यातीसाठी सुद्धा आपल्याला आखाती देश आपण वापरतो. तर तिथे झालेल्या समस्यांचा ओव्हरऑल ब्रॉडर इकॉनॉमीवर विपरीत परिणाम होत असतो. But when we talk about the long-term challenges, they involve structural growth slowdowns, reduce reliability of various trade arrangements, trade corridors, जे आपले आत्तापर्यंतचे ट्रेड पार्टनर्स आहेत ते विश्वासार्ह राहत नाहीत. आपल्याला नवीन नवीन ट्रेडसाठी देश शोधावे लागतात, त्यांच्याबरोबर अरेंजमेंट्स कराव्या लागतात. ह्या सगळ्यात खूप वेळ जातो, हे ओव्हरनाईट होऊ शकत नाही. कॉम्प्रोमाइज सप्लाय चेन्स आणि आपलं गव्हर्मेंट कन्झ्युमर्सना, लोकांना तो शॉक जास्त भिडू नये म्हणून स्वतःवर जे प्रेशर घेतं त्याच्यामुळे गव्हर्मेंटचं कर्ज वाढत जातं, डेट वाढत जातं. सो असे सगळे त्याचे दूरगामी परिणाम पण असतात. सो वी हॅड सीन इमिजिएटली दॅट इंडियाज इवन इफ retail prices of petrol and diesel were controlled by government, we had seen, if you look at the crude oil basket price for India, during peak hostilities, they had crossed $110 and even touched $126 per barrel, during peak hostilities, before easing closer to $70 and 84 per barrel because of intermittent ceasefires, temporary ceasefires between Iran and USA and supply readjustments. So to reduce the price shock to domestic consumers, retail petrol and diesel prices were frozen for a long period of time. This war broke out on February 28th, but in the month of May, for the first time, oil marketing companies raised prices in 4 installments. Until then, they were completely controlled. And government even granted some tax reliefs, reduction in special additional excise duties on petrol, diesel, etc. And as students of economics, that nothing comes without a cost. Economics is full of trade-offs. So what happened? Because of these measures, the under-recoveries of oil marketing companies, which were not allowed to raise the retail prices, they touched near rupees 30,000 crore per month at the height of the Strait of Hormuz shipping problems. And the tax relief which government entailed, that involved an estimated revenue loss of rupees 14,000 crore per day. So, see, we look at only one side of it and we say, oh, India remains insulated, consumers are not affected, what's going wrong with it? No, at the same time, when you are giving benefit from one hand, you are taking the risk from the other hand, and that is building the future liability, the forward liability. Now look at, the markets where there was no government intervention and, movements happen based on the market sentiments. We lost huge amount of money. India lost $18 billion from its debt and equity markets in calendar year 2026 so far. And last year, the capital flight was $12 billion. So we saw heavy selling in our stock markets. The market capitalization, was lost to the extent of $500 to $600 billion, etc., etc. So naturally, that put pressure on our currency. रुपयाची व्हॅल्यू कशी ठरते? तुम्ही निर्यातीमधून जे मिळवता आणि तुमच्या रुपी डिनॉमिनेटेड असेट्सना जी मागणी असते आंतरराष्ट्रीय मार्केटमध्ये, त्याच्यावर रुपयाची व्हॅल्यू ठरते. जेव्हा तुमच्याच देशातनं तुमच्या पैशासाठी किंवा तुमच्या पैशात जे असेट्स व्हॅल्यू होतात त्यांच्यासाठीची मागणी कमी होते, नॅचरली तुमच्या करन्सीसाठीची मागणी कमी होते. एका वर्षात रुपयाचं अवमूल्यन गेल्या वर्षी, म्हणजे ते चढ उतार होत असतात, पण पूर्ण 2025 हे वर्ष घेतलं तर जवळपास 5% रुपयाचा ऱ्हास झाला. आणि ह्या वर्षी पहिल्या 6 महिन्यातच 7% रुपयाचा ऱ्हास झाला. Now rupee has crossed 96 mark by mid 2026 because of heavy capital outflows and global trade and tariff pressures. Now you all must be reading it in newspapers. As Professor Paranjpe said, I don't know how many of you keep track of current events. But to stabilize rupee, Reserve Bank of India undertakes heavy dollar sales. These are called as direct market interventions. and to insulate liquidity, they intervene not just in spot market but also in forward markets, again creating a forward liability for the nation. It controlled speculative bets on rupees by controlling the open market positions that banks take. It broadened foreign investment routes, facilitated portfolio investments in government securities, lifted short-term investment limits for portfolio investors, made NRI deposits more attractive by offering higher rates, etc., etc. Now the question is, are these measures enough? I will answer this question later. First, we will see how India has responded strategically to the ongoing tariff war started by the US administration and shifting geopolitics. So what our government has done, our primary response centered on economic diversification and active trade diplomacy. We have succeeded in advancing high-profile trade pacts with UK and European Union to reduce our disproportionately high dependence on US, both for exports and imports. With the help of active diplomatic dialogue, we have managed to secure lower US tariff rather than getting into retaliatory escalations. आधी आपण काय करायचो की त्यांनी वाढवले मग आम्ही वाढवणार असं करून ते जे युद्ध चालायचं, आता आपण धडा शिकलो. आपल्याला माहिती आहे की एका मोठ्या बलिष्ठ राष्ट्राशी आपण लढू शकत नाही. तेव्हा मग त्यातल्या त्यात गोड वागून 12.5% टॅरिफ 10% आणणं वगैरे वगैरे करण्यात आपण यशस्वी झालो आहे. We have managed to diversify our energy sources by expanding crude procurement from 27 to 41 countries. Scaling up discounted Russian imports. किती अमेरिकेने दबाव आणला तरी आपण रशियाकडून ऑइल आयात करायचं सोडलेलं नाही आहे, कारण त्याच्यात खूप मोठ्या प्रमाणात आपली फॉरेन म्हणजे परदेशी चलन वाचतं. We have increased our long-term LNG, LPG partnerships with the US and Norway. We have rerouted our maritime shipments via the Cape of Good Hope to bypass blockages in the Strait of Hormuz. Similarly, in the refining field, we are increasing our reliance on domestic refining expansions. We have undertaken, we are expanding refining activity in other states like Assam, Haryana, wherever, we have identified those locations. We have doubled our LPG terminal capacity in Karnataka. We have utilized strategic petroleum reserves. We have accelerated transition towards renewable energy. We have invoked Essential Commodities Act, etc., etc. We have been trying to improve our domestic economic resilience by boosting manufacturing. For that, we have introduced production-linked incentive schemes to develop the domestic market as a reliable alternative to China for global supply chains. We are also focusing on gaining competitive advantage in high-tech exports like electronics, mobile manufacturing, and even during the export slowdown, these are some of the exports which have stood firm and well, and we have earned good amount of earnings on that. So, in short, what we have done, we have, India's international economic relations are shifting toward aggressive multi-alignment rather than keeping, staying aligned to few countries. Now we are getting aligned with a broader group of countries. Aggressive trade diversification and strategic supply chain resilience. As stated earlier, key developments include signing major foreign trade agreements, reducing vulnerability to Western protectionism, crude price shocks, and championing Global South. You know what are Global South? What are the countries in Global South? They are primarily developing countries from Africa, Latin America, and poor countries from Asia, not the South Korea or Japan types. But the BRICS countries, that is India, China, Indonesia, then Brazil, and South Africa, these are the major players in Global South. So India is championing Global South by leading multilateral forums, by advancing digital infrastructure and forging healthcare partnerships. Now I will come to that question which I raised earlier as to whether all these responses are enough or something more needs to be done. Is India facing a temporary economic slowdown because of these external macroeconomic shocks, or there are serious structural problems with India? So while it is understood that we stand at crossroads because of external shocks from Middle Eastern instability to US tariffs, as students of economics, you should appreciate this, that many of our challenges actually originate from the domestic arena. आणि परांजपे सर म्हणाले तसं आपल्याला ह्या बाबतीत नॅशनल पर्स्पेक्टिव्ह मनात ठेवूनच विचार करायला पाहिजे. कारण बाहेरच्या जगात जे काही घडतं त्याच्यावर आपला कंट्रोल नसतो. आपल्याला ते आहे त्या स्वरूपात स्वीकारायला लागतं. पण आपलं घर बळकट करणं हे आपल्या हातात असतं. तर आपलं घर खरंच बळकट आहे का ह्यासाठी जर आपण बघितलं तर let me share some of my experiences when I worked as chief economist in Bank of Baroda, because I used to oversee investor relations for the bank. And when you oversee investor relations, you are representing not just a large public sector bank, but you are representing the government. So you get an opportunity to have a very close dialogue with foreign investors. So I have studied some of the responses of these foreign investors. What are they saying about India? And these are not portfolio investors. These are the investors who are investing in our projects, in our plants, in our machinery. They are not fly-by-night operators. They are serious investors. They say, we feel India needs another wave of structural reforms to strengthen manufacturing, encourage investment, and improve ease of doing business. Now, we keep saying that India is, after 91, 92, when we undertook broad-based economic liberalization, our score ideally should have improved in economic freedom index. Unfortunately, that has not happened. The red tapeism from administrative services has not come down. The license raj has not shrunk. So even if we keep saying that, our score in ease of doing business has been improving, if you talk to people on the ground, you will realize that they still feel many constraints. Investors also point to sluggish private sector capital spending. See, today in India, the capex push is coming primarily from the central government. But private corporate sector is not investing enough, despite the fact that corporate balance sheets are strong. It is not just that they are not investing, they are investing, but they are not investing in India. They are investing overseas. The number of large companies that are undertaking investments abroad has gone up substantially. When we look at the foreign direct investment inflows figure, generally what we read in newspapers are gross inflows. But if you look at the net inflows, when they adjust that for repatriation of profits or, investments of the Indian companies abroad, etc., for last 6 years, our net FDI inflows are in negative zone. That means more people are pulling out capital from India than putting in India. And the reason for that is that they say that, we find that, here the policy environment is not stable. There is still a lot of red tapeism, and demand outlook is uncertain, whatever. Indian technology companies, high-tech, startups and all, they have excelled in services, but they have invested very little in proprietary products, leaving the country absent from many of today's fast-growing industries. So private investment has lagged, as I said, despite strong corporate balance sheets. It's not just the shortage of capital, there are other structural barriers, including land acquisition, labor regulations, and complex approval processes, which discourage businesses from expanding manufacturing. We have also failed to capitalize fully on the China Plus One opportunity. जेव्हा चीनमध्ये स्लोडाऊन सुरू झाला होता आणि इन्व्हेस्टमेंट्स चीनच्या बाहेर पडत होती, तेव्हा लोकांना वाटत होतं की भारतासाठी ही खूप चांगली संधी आहे इन्व्हेस्टमेंट अट्रॅक्ट करण्याची. पण प्रत्यक्षात तसं झालं नाही. ह्याचं मुख्य कारण हे आहे की आज जे महत्त्वाचे सेक्टर्स मानले जातात, सेमी कंडक्टर्स किंवा आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजन्स हार्डवेअर, ह्याच्यात अजूनही आपण खूप मागे आहोत आणि हे आपल्याला मान्य केलं पाहिजे. इन्व्हेस्टर्स ह्या सगळ्याचा अभ्यास करतात. अजूनही आपण बघितलं एम्प्लॉयमेंट सीनकडे, तर 90% ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट इन इंडिया रिमेन्स इन द इन्फॉर्मल सेक्टर, अनऑर्गनाइज सेक्टर. 90%. Only about 80 to 90 million people in India are registered taxpayers. What does that mean? Our total population is what? 1.47 billion. 80 to 90 million is what? Not even 6%. Only 6% people pay taxes. But every year, 10 million new workers enter India's labor force. So India's growth experience is described as a jobless growth experience. And we are seeing the tensions of that. Whatever Gen Z protests you have seen, you know, they may look as if they are based only on NEET examination, this, that and all. Actually, we have seen paper leaks. Even when I was in 10th standard, there was a paper leak. So this is going on for years. But the major problem is that even if a person qualifies that examination, what next? How many young people get gainfully employed in our country? And major reason for that is that manufacturing sector in India has failed to become India's employment engine. Today that sector contributes only 13 to 14% to our overall GVA, that is gross value added, and employs below 12% of the workforce. So when you look at the growth experience of other successful Asian countries like South Korea or Taiwan, Japan, even Indonesia for that matter, recently Vietnam, their manufacturing sector's contribution to their GDP exceeds 60-70%. In India, it is 13 to 14%. Now, services sector, even if it accounts for nearly 55% of GDP, the growth of services is concentrated in skill-intensive activities. Information technology-enabled services, all high-tech activities that exclude majority of our workforce. Over 70% of whom possess less than secondary education or limited vocational skills. See, recently they have brought out a report, Indian Labour Bureau, National Statistical Organization. They bring out this periodic labor survey. So they have brought out a report on 46 millennium cities where, जिथे 10 लाखापेक्षा जास्त लोकसंख्या आहे, अशा शहरांचा अहवाल आणलाय. तर त्याच्यातही असं दिसून येतं की ह्या शहरांमधून एकूण 70% 69% ऑफ पीपल गेट क्लासिफाईड ॲज नॉट इन एज्युकेशन, एम्प्लॉयमेंट और ट्रेनिंग. दॅट्स अ ह्यूज नंबर. So weak job creation, then stagnant wages, which we hear all the time, especially in the rural belts, sluggish private spending, private investment, and faltering broad-based domestic demand, these are not isolated problems. They reinforce on one another in a feedback loop, and they have trapped the economy in a low growth equilibrium path. As students of economics, you must be studying index. Every month they release information on index of industrial production. Now, in terms of use-based production, they give you information on capital goods, intermediate goods, infrastructure goods, consumer goods. Within consumer goods, there are two categories: consumer durables and consumer non-durables. Now, consumer durables represent the consumption basket of relatively higher income groups. There you see the growth is quite healthy. But if you look at consumer non-durables production growth, which actually throws light on the production of goods of mass consumption, there is tremendous volatility. And in most of the times, it is in the negative zone because that moves along with the incomes earned by majority of people. If 90% of employment takes place in informal sectors, what different picture you will expect? This is all logically and internally consistent. That's why, we constantly see tremendous volatility in the production of goods of mass consumption. दुसरं काय चिन्ह आहे की लोक पुरेशा प्रमाणात जॉब्स नाही आहेत आणि पुरेशा प्रमाणात लोक मिळवत नाही आहेत. बचतीचा दर बघा, 47 वर्षातला सगळ्यात लोएस्ट बचतीचा दर आज भारतात आहे. द सेव्हिंग्ज हाऊसहोल्ड सेव्हिंग्ज रेट हॅज ड्विंडल्ड टू 5% ऑफ GDP. It is the lowest in last 47 years. And what is the other side of it? That household sector's debt to GDP ratio has touched 45.5%. That means most of the people today, and this is shown by Reserve Bank of India's Financial Stability Report, that large number of Indians are increasingly relying on personal loans and gold-backed borrowings to sustain their consumption level rather than rising income. So बचत ज्या देशात इतकी कमी होते त्या देशात गुंतवणूक कमी झाली तर आश्चर्य नाही. त्या देशात जिथे तुमचे खर्च करण्यासाठी लोकांना कर्ज काढावं लागतं, कर्जाच्या ट्रॅपमध्ये जेव्हा देश अडकलेला असतो तेव्हा नॅचरली त्या देशाची व्हल्नरेबिलिटी वाढते. सो नो मॅटर how praiseworthy India's strategic response to global economic challenges may be, its internal structural problems remain the root cause of its continued vulnerability. So जोपर्यंत आपण ह्या प्रश्नांवर ठोस धोरणात्मक उपाय आणत नाही तोपर्यंत ही परिस्थिती बदलणार नाही. एक्सटर्नल शॉक्सने आपल्याला अधिकाधिकच त्रास होत जाईल. थँक्यू फॉर गिविंग मी दिस अपॉर्च्युनिटी.
Thank you, Dr. Nitsure. It was really an insightful session on the current state of Indian economy. I now ask and request Dr. Madhura to introduce our third speaker, Group Captain Purohit.
It's my privilege to introduce Group Captain Praveer Purohit sir, an Indian Air Force veteran. Sir graduated from the National Defense Academy in 1989 and was commissioned into the flying branch of the Indian Air Force in 1990. In his service of over 3 decades, the officer flew over 5,500 hours over the entire geographical expanse of India, as well as in Bhutan and Mauritius. He is a qualified flying instructor who has transformed numerous young men and women across the Indian Air Force, Indian Navy, Indian Army, and Indian Coast Guard into competent military pilots. Sir has held numerous positions of leadership and responsibility in the IAF. He had a few stints at the policy-making level at Air HQ and HQ Training Command. Additionally, he had the unique distinction of having served with the Indian Navy and alongside Indian Army. He headed the Faculty of Leadership and Air Power at the prestigious Air Force Administrative College for 5 years. Sir has spent over 2 years from December 2021 to May 2024 on the deputation to the government of Mauritius. He was actively involved in the training and capability development of the Mauritian pilots. His professional acumen, leadership and contribution to furthering Indo-Mauritius relations earned him a commendation by government of Mauritius. A prolific writer, Sir writes regularly on strategic matters, geopolitics, international relations, and defense issues. His articles and analytical pieces have been published in various digital print media and journals such as Financial Express, Millennium Post, Indian Express, Sakar, Tarun Bharat, Pudhari, Air Power Journal, Journal of Defense Studies, Finns Journal of Diplomacy and Strategy, and many more. Without further ado, let me invite onto the stage Group Captain Purohit sir.
My eminent co-speakers who have enlightened you till now, the respected senior citizens who are present here, ladies, gentlemen, and most importantly, students, the Gen Z as they are called, and the future of Bharat as I consider them. Many of them have left because they thought Air Force का officer आ रहा है तो कोणीतरी bombardment वगैरह करणार है. But anyway, a very good evening and namaskar. So before I start my talk, there is something shown on the screen and I throw this question open. काय वाटते तुम्हाला हे बघून? काय बघताय तुम्ही? Anyone? No answers. नाही, exam मध्ये negative marking नाही आहे. हां, ओके, ग्लोबल लेवल. अजून काय? रूट्स, ओके. अजून? बर्ड आय व्ह्यू, ओके. अजून काही दिसतंय का? ओके सर, पावर डिस्ट्रीब्युशन, व्हेरी करेक्ट. ओके, कनेक्टिंग डॉट्स, व्हेरी नाईस. नाव टेल मी द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, की तिथं ती लेन्स भिंग का आहे? ओके, एनिथिंग एल्स? Okay, fine. So what I'm trying to say is that या भिंगाने आपण काय बघतो? When you see through a lens, what do you see? तुम्हाला काहीतरी मोठं दिसतं ना? So exactly. आता if you see that, तो जगाचा नकाशा आहे. जग काही बदललंय का नकाशामध्ये? तेच आहे ना जे पूर्वीपासून होतं, तेच आहे. पण या भिंगाने बघितलं की what we do is that we see the world through a lens so that we understand it. And that is why what I say is a geopolitical lens simply does not ask what is happening. It asks why it is happening, how geography, power, resources, technology, trade, and national interests shape the behavior of states. States means when I say nations. And when we begin to view today's world through that lens, familiar headlines start revealing deeper patterns. And therefore, today, click. What I'm going to speak, no, previous. Back. Yeah. Current global order through a geopolitical lens. For nearly 8 decades, international relations were anchored by a predictable paradigm. There was a rules-based order, which was not so orderly, but still there was some order. This system gave us hope that economic interdependence would disincentivize territorial aggression and that global bodies could reliably arbitrate global friction. Today, that paradigm is under severe stress. Next, please. No, blank. Back. Okay. We are living through an unprecedented structural realignment. The rules that governed post-World War II order are fraying.
the era of American unipolarity is being aggressively contested by closer cooperation amongst authoritarian regimes. Simultaneously, the global south is flatly rejecting the binary choices of the past. Instead, they are demanding strategic autonomy and a fundamental revision of global governance. Hard power, geographic vulnerabilities, and resource dependencies are once again the primary drivers of state behavior. The geographic theater of conflict is rapidly expanding from high-intensity conventional war in Europe to critical maritime choke points in the Red Sea and the Indo-Pacific. Moreover, the weaponization of supply chains, critical minerals, and emerging technologies has completely blurred the line between economic competition and national security. To make sense of this chaos, we must look past the diplomatic rhetoric and examine the structural forces that are driving these shifts. Next, please. A recent report by JP Morgan calls our current reality a diffusely multipolar world. This means global influence is dispersed across different actors, distributed unevenly across domains, and moving at entirely different speeds. Today, deep interdependencies coexist alongside intense rivalries. So just take a look at this slide. If you look at the unipolar dominance that post the breakup of USSR and when the Cold War supposedly ended, you find that till the global financial crisis of 2007 to 9, there was US dominance in technology, militarily of course, but there were early signs of multipolarity in trade because European Union was also coming up and becoming a good trade bloc. Thereafter, after the global financial crisis, of which China was the biggest beneficiary, or it made use of it, you find that China started challenging the US slowly and steadily. Multipolarity in trade diplomacy because you had multiple trade blocs that were coming up. And then if you now see that is a trend which JP Morgan has said, post 2030, you will find that trade becomes multipolar, technology remains largely bipolar, US and China, with EU and India pursuing digital sovereignty and things like that. So, though US may continue to dominate militarily, because right now also US is the only country which has got the ability to project power anywhere in the globe. Yes, it is being contested, that is of course a reality. Next. Now, there are three dynamics that define this transition, and they are all taking place together. Fragmentation, as traditional institutions erode. Cohesion, as shared values continue to bind like-minded states. And fierce strategic competition, which is no longer actually limited to Washington and Beijing, but actively driven by rising middle powers. Now, therefore, this produces a layered and contradictory reality. Our political landscape appears deeply fractured, yet our functional world remains interconnected. Understanding that precise paradox is the absolute key to understanding the contemporary global order. To truly understand this shifting global order, let us look at the world through a different prism, its conflict hotspots. These are not merely distant crises. They are the exact friction points where global power, regional ambition, and human suffering intersect. Let me ask you another question. How many active armed conflicts do you think are being fought worldwide today? Kiti wars kiva conflicts चालू आहेत जगात. Any guesses? Anyone? You can shoot, don't worry. No negative marks for wrong answers. Yeah, students? 15-20, okay. Next, please. According to data from the International Committee of the Red Cross, there are currently 130 active armed conflicts raging across the globe. Shockingly, that number has doubled over the last 15 years. This is the fractured reality of our time. While major geopolitical standoffs dominate our daily news feeds as headline wars, there is a parallel layer of devastating, forgotten wars in places like Congo, Sudan, and Myanmar. And beneath those lie the invisible wars consuming the Sahel, Ethiopia, and places like West Papua. Let us dissect a few of these critical arenas. I will begin with the Americas. Next, please. Latin America, is often overlooked, yet it is a dynamic laboratory of modern geopolitics. Here we see that global conflict is not just about big armies, it is about the erosion of state authority. Look across the map. I have circled certain countries which I'm going to mention. Venezuela, the political shift away from China represents a strategic gain for Washington. In Haiti, gang violence has forced direct UN security interventions. Meanwhile, Cuba continues to lean on Russian and Chinese backing. Colombia battles massive internal displacement, and Mexico's cartels fight wars that look less like organized crime and more like asymmetric warfare. Three main forces drive this landscape: the United States, regional power like Brazil, and an assertive China. While Washington acts as the traditional security guarantor, Beijing has quietly surpassed the US to become South America's largest trading partner. China is heavily funding infrastructure, building satellite tracking stations from Argentina to Venezuela, and systematically projecting power right inside Washington's traditional sphere of influence. Next, please. The Panama Canal is the ultimate flashpoint of this rivalry. This strategic artery handles 6% of global maritime commerce. Under its Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, China has secured operational control over the canal's two most critical cargo ports. This triggered rapid reaction and a geopolitical standoff. At the Shield of America summit in March this year, the United States drew a sharp line against Chinese influence over this critical infrastructure. Shortly thereafter, Panama's Supreme Court effectively stripped Chinese firms of these port operations. And now what does Beijing do? Beijing retaliated instantly, detaining over 130 Panamanian-flagged cargo ships in Chinese port in a single month. The Panama Canal is therefore no longer just a trade route. It is a contested choke point. And Latin America proves that great power competition is not limited or confined to Europe and Asia. It is playing out actively across the globe. From Latin America, let's now fly into Africa. Next, please. Africa's conflicts are deeply tied to global power rivalries and raw resources. Look at Sudan. Its devastating civil war between the military and paramilitary RSF is now grinding through its fourth year. It has uprooted over 15 million people, creating the world's largest humanitarian and displacement crisis. Regional powers have taken sides, with Egypt backing the army and the UAE backing the RSF, while interestingly, Russia leverages its UN security veto to block accountability on all sides. Next, please. Now, just across the continent, the Sahel region is what is highlighted in that brownish color, is engulfed by jihadist networks exploiting fragile states. In Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, which are circled, military coups have paved the way for Russia's Africa Corps, which was formerly known as Wagner Group. You must have all heard about it during the Ukraine war, to entrench itself, thereby heavily expanding Moscow's footprint. Next, please. Further south, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda-backed M23 militias seized the key city of Goma in early 2025, displacing nearly 1 million civilians in a single year. Meanwhile, Cameroon's brutal Ambazonia war grinds into its 8th year. Next, please. This instability directly impacts global trade and infrastructure. The strategic Horn of Africa is now hyper-militarized. In Djibouti, a very, very poor country, you can see major American, Chinese, French, and Japanese military bases stationed literally side by side, and they get a lot of royalty out of it, the Djibouti people. They are all desperately competing to monitor and control the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Red Sea. And if you have read recently, Houthi rebels have started attacking Saudi targets in this very area. Now, the driver here at play is binary. A stable Africa will structurally enhance global order, but continued instability will only accelerate global disorder because the major powers are at play here. Next, please. In contrast to Africa, where conflict is driven by resources and proxy involvement, in Europe, it is about the security architecture, ideology, and revisionism. The Russia-Ukraine war, now in its 5th year, shows no sign of ending. The Russian invasion has shaken Europe out of its stupor, and nations have increased their defense spending. Around 10 million Ukrainians have been displaced. This accounts for 25% of their pre-war population. The Center for Strategic and International Studies estimates Russian combat deaths at a roughly 4 to 4.5 lakh, while Ukraine is estimated to have suffered between 1.25 to 1.5 lakh soldiers killed. Now, viewed through a humanitarian lens, this is a very tragic war. But viewed through a geopolitical lens, it is about the balance of power in Europe, Russia's territorial ambitions, and the future of European security architecture. Because it has lost its primary lever of energy exports to Europe, Moscow has now increasingly resorted to hybrid warfare with an aim to destabilize, divide, and weaken European security from within. Now, rather than succumbing, Europe has pushed back. The geopolitical contest has hardened and will likely remain for some time. Let me now shift closer home to Asia and the Indo-Pacific. Next, please. The Indo-Pacific region is as shown on the screen. This region is important because it is home to roughly 2/3 of the world's population and produces over 60% of the global GDP. It can safely be called the world's most dynamic economic engine. The economic policies, technology supply chains, and market access within this region dictate global financial stability and growth trajectories. Next. This vast region holds the most critical sea lanes of communication on the planet. It is defined by a dense network of vital straits: the Strait of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, Malacca, Sunda, and Lombok. Further east, it branches into the highly contested Taiwan Strait and the Miyako Strait in the East China Sea. Take a few seconds to view this particular slide. Now, viewed through a maritime lens, these are simple waterways where trade and people should conveniently transport themselves. Now, viewed through a geopolitical lens, they are severe high-stake maritime choke points and an arena of conflict. These narrow corridors carry over 2/3 of all global trade and the vast majority of the world's energy supplies. Today, they are not just commercial shipping lanes, they are heavily militarized friction zones. A single blockade, a single miscalculation, say for example in the Taiwan Strait or the Malacca, would instantly paralyze the global economy. For any major power, and particularly for rising Asian nations, controlling or securing these specific oceanic gateways is no longer just a naval strategy. It is an absolute matter of national security. Next, please. Now, does this region hold great promise for global growth? Yes and no. Yes, because on paper, it has all the components for historic development. No, because it is the geographic core of the explosive US-China rivalry. When you factor in Beijing's territorial tensions with so many of its neighbors, from India, Bhutan, Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, you get a recipe for intense conflict. China has forcibly seized dozens of maritime features across maritime features across South China Sea, violating international law. Its navy and maritime militias employ the most aggressive gray zone maritime warfare seen anywhere in the world. Beijing acts as a regional bully, forcing peaceful nations to now rapidly fortify their defenses. This malfeasance has triggered a powerful counter-reaction through new security frameworks like the Quad and AUKUS. Yet, regional unity remains fragile. While everybody professes to ASEAN centrality, the reality is that ASEAN itself is internally paralyzed, with multiple member nations pulled firmly into China's economic orbit and a few into their geopolitical orbit. Next, please. Worse still, China is not the only spoiler. A nuclear North Korea, closely aligned with China and Russia, forms a dangerous triad. Together with Iran, this lawless axis is often known as CRINC, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, a coalition of regimes actively working to fracture global democracy. Next, please. Asia, too, is no exception to the turmoil, conflict, and geopolitical games. We are aware of the situation in West Asia. The main regional players here in the battle for power and influence are Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. The extra-regional powers in the great game are the United States, China, and Russia. In South Asia, China has made significant inroads through economic and military diplomacy. Tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan, India and Pakistan, India and China persist. The 21st century is often called the Asian century. But seen holistically and especially through the lens of geopolitics, if we keep fighting, I wonder if it is more likely to become Asia's missed century. Next, please. The polar regions have now turned to be the world's newest geopolitical fault lines. In the north, climate change is melting the Arctic, and the US, Russia, China, Canada, Norway, Japan, South Korea are trying to dominate the newly created shipping lanes, claim vast underwater oil and gas reserves, and expand their military footprints. In contrast, Antarctica is frozen in a delicate diplomatic truce. Regulated by the 1959 treaty that bans mining and military activity, the continent is legally dedicated to science. Yet, beneath this peaceful surface, nations are now using science diplomacy to quietly anchor territorial claims, positioning themselves for an inevitable future of global resource scarcity. For global stability, what happens at the two ends of the earth will fundamentally reshape the landscape of international relations. Taken together, the regions that we traveled around the world show that the current world order is not changing in one uniform way. It is unraveling differently across continents. Through state erosion in the Americas, resource wars in Africa, alliance crisis in Europe, and layered rivalries in China. Next, please, blank. So what are the trends in the international order? With these regional conflicts in mind, let's analyze. And I have just distilled this transformation into 4 defining shifts. The first is the wealth illusion. And here I talk about the total GDP versus the per capita average per capita GDP reality. While the global economic center of gravity is shifting towards emerging giants like India, China, Brazil, a critical fact remains hidden. In terms of average per capita GDP, which is, I feel, the true indicator of a nation's wealth and development, the West remains decades ahead. Only 3 Asian nations feature in the global top 30, while there is no Latin American or African nation in the top 30. Therefore, I feel claims of immediate decline of the West are vastly exaggerated. Second is technopolitics has now become the ultimate fault line. Economic wealth is no longer enough to guarantee national security. Critical industries like advanced semiconductors, aerospace, and artificial intelligence are monopolized by just a handful of states. Technology is no longer just an economic driver, it is a primary geopolitical weapon. The battle over who sets the global rules for AI and digital infrastructure is now just as critical as controlling physical shipping lanes. Take the case of semiconductors. Viewed through an economic lens, chips are commercial products. Viewed through a geopolitical lens, they are strategic assets. Third is the rise of global spoilers and hedgers. Look at the CRINC countries, which I showed you earlier. Together, they command a vast nuclear arsenal and hold 2 UN vetoes. Yet, they fundamentally lack the ideational, moral, and economic capacity to build an alternative global system. Consequently, they act as strategic spoilers, using hybrid warfare, proxies, and disinformation to disrupt whatever order was existing. Meanwhile, in Asia, Southeast Asian nations and South Asian as well as West Asian nations are desperately trying to hedge, trying to maintain flexible partnerships without being forced into a binary trap between Washington and Beijing. The fourth is the fragmentation of democratic values. We are witnessing a severe regression in democratic governance. Recent global democracy indices indicate that nearly 72% of the world's population now lives under autocratic or hybrid regimes, This is the highest share since the 1970s. Freedom House has documented nearly 2 consecutive decades of global democratic decline. So, having seen this, and amidst this internal churn, what are the definitive lessons for India? To secure our place in the shifting landscape, we must focus on 4 critical imperatives. There are many, but I've just stuck to 4. First, our domestic foundation must match our global ambition. India's demographic dividend is not automatic. It must be earned by aggressively turning our population into productive economic and intellectual capacity. We must sustain a minimum economic growth rate of 8% per year, driven by the massive creation of high-value jobs. To truly leverage our goodwill in the Indo-Pacific, we must completely eliminate bureaucratic delays and implementation deficits. We must deliver strategic projects on time, every single time. Second, we must transition from being a reactor to being a rules shaper. We must structurally pivot towards shaping global architectures in technology, finance, outer space, rather than merely managing their consequences. The 2 A's, agility and adaptation, will be our compass. Third, we must recognize that the cost of non-alignment has now risen sharply. Today, middle powers operate in a narrowing corridor between Washington and Beijing. While India is beautifully positioned as a global swing state, multi-alignment has practical hard limits. Perpetual ambiguity under the guise of strategic autonomy could face diminishing returns. Our traditional preference for fence-sitting may embolden China to further constrain India's rise. Ultimately, we will face sharper strategic choices. Fourth, we must back our diplomacy with credible hard power. To maintain a fierce conventional deterrence, India's military capabilities, specifically in the maritime and aerospace domain, required rapid and significant investment and upgradation. The deepest lesson of our time is this: multipolarity, which is very often touted, is not a neat, stable balance of power. It is a messy, fragmented mosaic. For India, the ultimate challenge is to navigate this landscape with absolute strategic clarity and unwavering humanitarian responsibility. That is the true test of leadership in the modern world. One cannot be faulted for thinking that our world is brimming with absolute chaos, inequality, and unpredictability. Critics boldly claim that the global order has collapsed. I think a little differently. Yes, the system has profound shortcomings, but we must remember that the primary objective of the post-World War II order was never to eliminate all minor wars. It was to prevent a third world war and avoid a catastrophic nuclear conflict. In preventing both, it has undeniably succeeded. Critics claim international law is dead. But if it were true, why do aggressive powers try so hard to manufacture elaborate legal justifications for their actions? The very fact that they desperately seek legal cover proves that international law still holds profound power. The global order, therefore, is not crumbling, it is evolving. It is changing its texture. The challenge ahead is in mastering this complex transition. Let us rise to master this challenge. We stand at a pivotal moment where crisis and opportunity coexist, where perils are matched by possibilities. Yet, history proves that the international system can endure today's intense geopolitical rivalries, allowing nations to forge a safer, more stable future. To understand my optimism, we only need to look back in time. Even at the absolute height of the Cold War, when global conflict seemed unresolvable, leaders recognized this profound truth. President John F. Kennedy reminded the world during a moment of deep global crisis, and I quote him, "Our problems are man-made. Therefore, they can be solved by man. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable. And we believe they can do it again. Unquote. With this, I end my talk and thank you for your attention. Jai Hind.
I request all the dignitaries to come up on the dais, please. Please join us on the dais. Thank you, Captain Purohit. It was an absolutely wonderful analysis. The new forms of diplomacy and the warfare, the technology, the geopolitics, the economics, almost, I mean, nothing is missed. Thank you very much for a very wonderful session. Thank you, everyone. I now request Professor Apte to express her views.
Good evening. Like last time, I've written what I wanted to say because the evening obviously has been a very, very emotional one. And I don't think I will be able to speak otherwise. Our Honorable Principal, Avinash Mohoril Sir, and Honorable Jayant Tumranikar Sir, who had to leave. Our three guest speakers for the program, my professor, Shrikant Paranjpe Sir, Dr. Rupa Rege Nitsure Ma'am, and Group Captain Praveer Purohit, whom I actually find it difficult, both of them, that I didn't know you 3 weeks back. It's just so nice to have connected with you. All the dear senior retired colleagues of SP College, senior respected faculties across social sciences, teachers of political science from different colleges, friends, family, and dear students. Ever since the book publication started becoming a reality, two emotions kept playing out. Feeling completely overwhelmed and deeply humbled. To be honest, ever since I started my teaching career in 1989 and moved through different academic institutes till I settled in SP College, I realized that this is what I truly love. My subject, political science, which is as exciting today as it was then, and my students. Each batch over the last 35 years has given me so much. I feel truly blessed. So all that I did actually in this last many, many years was simply to follow my passion for teaching. But to see that effort being appreciated through a volume like this is a huge recognition, which I'm not sure I entirely deserve, but I accept it with all the humility. This volume may have my name, but it is truly a testament to a collective journey. I'm totally aware that no one can achieve anything individually. This has been the result of an incredible support system around me. To all my teachers from my undergraduate days in New Delhi, to my department in Savitribai Phule Pune University, Professor Shrikant Paranjpe being one of them. To my colleagues in SP College and outside, across subjects, across faculties, thank you for sharing and discussions on different topics over endless cups of tea. To Shikshan Prasarak Mandali and SP College for giving me such a positive environment to grow. To my friends and family, your absolute love and faith in me cannot be expressed in words. Our guest speakers today warrant a very special thank you. Professor Shrikant Paranjpe has been my go-to person whenever I wanted the best talk, and he was always there for me. And after today's speech, you will all agree with me 100%. Dr. Rupa, Rege, Nitsure, a brilliant economist, and Group Captain Praveer, Purohit. I met them and I invited them, and they so readily agreed to be a part of this program. Thank you so much. And the lectures that they have given have been absolutely excellent, and we have learned so much about the economics and geopolitics of IR from them. I wish to express my deepest appreciation to the editorial committee of this book. In fact, the idea of bringing out such a book goes to my very dear friend, Dr. Vaijayanti Belsare, and it was taken up so enthusiastically by Pranita Pathak and Neha Agashe, so well supported by the publisher's Unique Foundation. The Unique Foundation, led by Tukaram Jadhav, Mukta Kulkarni, and Vivek Ghotale, is a very respected platform that has been contributing meaningfully in the socio-economic domain through its research activities and publication of quality books for students as well as society at large. And I feel truly proud that they too are my students. My heartfelt gratitude to all the contributors of the volume. They have written wonderful chapters covering the different contours of international politics. These contributors include my senior friends, colleagues, as well as young scholars. Thank you so much for taking out time and sharing your expertise. This volume is indeed an important value addition to our understanding of international politics today. Thank you very much once again. So to all who worked tirelessly for one whole year, managing college work, research, home, family, to bring this book to life, I am touched. This volume, while making me feel very proud, also gives me a deep sense of responsibility to continue the passion and to keep giving back to the next generation. Finally, to my dear audience in Ramabai and those who are watching this program live, thank you for your presence and love. I will cherish this honor and your warmth. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You have already presented wonderful gratitude to all of us. So today's gathering has been a beautiful confluence of knowledge and creativity. I'm here to present the vote of thanks for today's evening. But before I begin, there is always a special and extra credit that we have behind the scenes. I would like to call Arundhati Apte, ma'am. The moment we asked us, would you compare this evening, it was immediate yes from her. So special appreciation of Arundhati, ma'am. I would request Sanjyot Apte, ma'am. Thank you so much. A special appreciation. I mean, there is always one person who is behind the stage. A special appreciation to Vivek Ghotale, sir, for being with us thick and thin and not getting irritated at any point of time. म्हणजे कधीही कुठल्याही एडिट्सना अजिबात माझ्यावर आणि नेहावर न रागवता शांतपणे सगळी कामं आमच्याकडनं करून घेणं. सो इट इज रिअली क्रेडिटेबल. अ बिग अप्लॉज फॉर विवेक सर. थँक्यू सो मच. It was quite a learning process for us too. Thank you. So as we come to the close of this memorable celebration, it is pleasure again to express heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has contributed to making this book publication ceremony truly special. My first gratitude and a big thanks to Jayant Umranikar sir for gracing today's event. I offer my heartfelt thanks to our distinguished guests, Shri Shrikant Paranjpe sir, Dr. Rupa ma'am, and Group Captain Praveer Purohit sir. Your insightful thoughts, rich experiences, and inspired words have truly elevated today's program. Our heartfelt thanks to respected Principal Dr. Avinash Mohril sir for his visionary leadership and unwavering support. Today we celebrate not just the publication of book, but the dedication and scholarship of all our eminent authors, which Arundhati ma'am has already mentioned. So a special mention to all the authors. A big heartfelt appreciation to Unique Foundation, to Karam Zadhav sir and Mukta Kulkarni ma'am, Vivek Ghotale sir, and team for valuable guidance and making this dream come true. It was really a difficult task. It wouldn't have been possible without your faith. I would like to acknowledge specifically here Amol Patil for cover design of the book, which has really come out very well, and book layout done by Madhavi Kure and Amol Patil again. A warm acknowledgement to them. And to our dedicated technical support, especially the YouTube live streaming by Swapnil Joshi sir. Thank you. All our dear faculties, students from Civil Services course, Political Science Department faculties for helping us with all arrangements and a seamless coordination. A big and sincere thanks to all eminent scholars and audience. We had all the ex-heads of the department from various institutions. Thank you for gracing the occasion. Our colleagues, family and friends who are here for us and have not just been here physically but have joined online, so big thanks to them as well. Finally, to our dear students, thank you for your enthusiastic participation and energy. This evening will be incomplete if I don't thank Apte ma'am for giving us this opportunity to celebrate and be a reason for here together this evening. So a big applause for her. So before I conclude, I would like to thank each and everyone who contributed in ways seen and unseen. So as the saying goes, a book may bear the name of its authors, but it is always the result of many hearts and hands working together. It is this celebration of collective spirit. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being there just for me, and it's been a beautiful and a very emotional evening. And thank you so much, all of you.